We've got the minutes. I haven't got the copy of that.
Duncan, is there any date where we will be able to assemble in the chamber or a chamber?
We are live, so I declare the meeting open and welcome everybody to the meeting of today, being the 14th of October. Councillor Scandron, I'll ask you to do welcome to the country, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay my respect to elders both past and present. I would also like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders here today.
Thank you, and I'll read the civic prayer. Almighty God, from whom comes every good and perfect gift, we give you thanks for the blessings you bestow upon us in this Shire. Grant to those who hold office in this council the spirit of justice and truth, of wisdom and charity, that mindful of our responsibility, we may promote the welfare of your people and advance the common good. Amen. Can I ask all council to make sure their phones are on silent, please? And welcome to those who are watching this live streaming of the council meeting. We don't have any apologies. So we have the adoption of the previous minutes that were held on the 23rd of September 2020. Do I have somebody to move those minutes?
Move that way, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McLaughlin, seconded by Councillor Halstead. Is there any discussion on the correctness of the minutes? And I put that all in favour.
Aye.
Carried. Do we have any declarations of interest? Councillor Halstead. You're on mute, Councillor Halstead.
No, that was apology there, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any declaration at all.
Okay, so we have apologies for declaration of interest. Councillor Nelson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor
I have a non-pecuniary interest that's significant. It's in relation to item 9.1, 200306.03, section 8.2, review of determination of refused development application 200306, demolition of building and carrying out works and use of land for the purpose of vehicle sales or hire premises at 556 Argyle Street, Mossvale. The pecuniary interest is in relation to the fact that I am the chairman of the Rotary Club of Mossvale Charity Golf Day, which is to be held on Friday, the 20th of November 2020. And the Mossvale Motor Group is the major sponsor for the Charity Golf Day, giving financial contribution to that event. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will have no involvement in the matter by absenting myself and not take part in debate or voting on the issue as the provisions in section 451(2) of the Act apply.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson, for that comprehensive declaration of interest. Councillor Scandron.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Yes, just declaring on the same item, that's 9.1, 556 Argyle Street, Mossvale, non-pecuniary, less than significant, and that is that Kathy Barnsley, who's working for the applicant, does work for myself. And secondly, I own a block of commercially zoned land at 223 Argyle Street, Mossvale, which of course is in my annual declaration, but less than significant. Thank you.
So will you stay in the chamber and vote, or will you?
Yes, I will be staying in the chamber, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Okay, any further declarations of interest? Then we move on to the public forum. There's no mayoral minute. And 12.4, planning proposal to amend clause 1.9A-2, which carries the local environment plan 2010 to include the western portion of Redford Park Barrel. Mr. G. Keaton will address council in support of the recommendation. So are you, we are letting you in, Mr. Kim. So you're on now. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon.
You have your time. You've been briefed on how long you have and whatever. So your time commences now, but there will be no questions at the end as it is public forum.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Gare, councillors, council staff, and everyone watching online. The strategy item for today's public discussion item reads that we identify and protect the unique characteristics of towns and villages to retain a sense of space. And this is the same discussion that took place many years ago with a collaboration between the council, local residents, and James Fairfax to identify the need to build a supporting urban estate with aesthetics beyond the Barrel DCP. RP is not a new estate in the middle of nowhere. It's one that's been meticulously planned and designed due to its neighbouring proximity to the heritage listed property. If anything, Mr. Fairfax's goal has always been to ensure the cultural significance of the heritage listed Redford Park. Redford Park Estate is the design guidelines, and those guidelines are us, the residents of RPE, who have all committed in our contract of sale to build homes beyond the guidelines of local council development controls. So this afternoon, I call upon councillors to support the primary goal of RPE, which is not only to protect, but to enhance the cultural significance of what Mr. Fairfax entrusted to the National Trust. Next slide, please. I'm representing an ever-growing list of concerned residents who are invested in the vision financially, emotionally, and with our families. We're building not to sell, but to live here. Certain developments can devalue our investment while trying to take advantage of their own by claiming to be something they are not. Next slide, please. Corner blocks in particular carry a heightened awareness as they anchor the streetscape and set the appropriate tone and scale for the estate. Owners of such blocks are required to take rather expensive additional amenity overlays. This involves significant enhancements to the building characteristics and added attention to detail around the landscaping. Yet the vast majority of owners have done so, and their investment is a testament to the quality and country feel of our estate. The text and pictures in the guidelines clearly illustrate an intention of a single dwelling over a quarter acre. Next slide, please. As 40 Sir James Fairfax is mentioned in the notes, I illustrate the facade to the left of your screen. In the middle is an example of a similar development in a neighbouring estate. Now, when viewing the overhead sales shot that's on your right, it's not difficult to notice how out of character these dwellings are with the homes that surround them in terms of bulk and scale, height, character, and it does not complement the neighbouring homes. This is the same situation at 40 Sir James Fairfax. It is now possible for future homes to be out of character with existing homes, which carries the real risk of creating an estate with an identity crisis. Next slide, please. In previous council meetings, councillors recall driving through the estate and observing a relaxed and spaced out nature of homes. It may have been more difficult to picture it while it was on paper, but now we have a clear example of how homes that only meet the Barrel DCP do not complement surrounding homes and threaten the urban amenity. Such dwellings can differ in all aspects such as material used, colour, and architectural design. Building envelopes are significantly pushed to the edges of the development, which is uncharacteristic of the estate's vision. Next slide, please. I love driving past these homes. Pictured here are 3 other corner blocks in the estate, all exhibiting enhanced articulation zones via, wrapped around verandas, gables of significant height and scale. There's a stark difference compared to the dwellings that I showed on the previous slides. Next slide, please. So we've chosen to call Redford Park our home because we're hoping to build something that will be unique and long-lasting legacy for future generations of Barrel. We ask for your continued support and consider supporting Council's recommendation to adjust the LEP for Redford Park so the estate is built to complement and protect the significance of the Redford Park precinct. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kim. We will now move on to public forum, item 18.1, in relation to a notice of motion 33-2020, Erridge Park Netball Courts, and Ms. Celia Marmont will address council in support of this recommendation. So have we got you in, yes. Ms. Marmont? Yes, we have.
Yes,
so,
hello?
Yes?
You can hear me? Fantastic.
We can hear you, we can see you. You've been listening, so we'll let you commence your presentation now.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Mayor and councillors. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak and advocate for the Southern Highlands Netball Association today in regards to the netball court upgrades at Erridge Park. I would also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Gundungurra people, and I recognise their ongoing connection to water, land and community. As I hope you are all well aware, the Southern Highlands Netball Association has been in discussion with council staff for the past 18 months in regards to the Erridge Park netball facilities and their need for these facilities to be upgraded. The Southern Highlands Netball Association was awarded $306,615 in grant money from the state government Stronger Country Communities Fund in February of this year. As I have previously stated in my letter to you councillors and staff on the 6th of October, the grant unfortunately does not fully fund the required works, leaving the association $160,000 short to complete the project this financial year. Schnarr has the funds to contribute 50% of the outstanding money, reducing council's contribution to $80,000. That is just over 15% of the cost that would get us over the line to complete the works on the netball courts. I was informed last Wednesday of last week that the council would be applying for the $80,000 through the Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Program, and we thank the staff for putting this application together for our association, and we do so very much hope that it is approved. Grants, however, are a gamble, and the association knows this only too well as we have applied for multiple grants at our own cost. The association is seeking your guarantee of financial support to complete the build before the return of the netball season in March of 2021 if the grant application is unsuccessful. Our committee has worked hard in applying for grants and retaining funds for the upgrade of the courts to benefit our netball community and growing Southern Highlands region. And I would like to reiterate at this point that we at Schnarr have financed nearly 80% of the total cost of this build. That is $386,615 of the total $465 required to upgrade this public asset. If we cannot commence the works within the 24 months of the grant allocation, we will lose the money for the upgrade, and the full cost of fixing the courts will fall entirely back on council. Our urgency to have the courts redone before the return of the netball season within this financial year is due to the recent drought we have all experienced, which has exacerbated an already existing issue of deterioration. And the evidence is supported in the images that I've provided showing the state of decline from 2019 to 2020. The association and its members have witnessed this decline of the courts over the past few years, and more notably over the short 10-week season we've experienced. We have already reduced our court availability from 6 courts to 5 due to safety concerns for players and fear that more courts will be unable to be used next season due to the knock-on effect of already unsafe playing surfaces. Erridge Park facilities are open to the public. By neglecting the need for renewal, you face the potential risk of injury on your land. As iterated in Council's Economic Development Plan, there is an anticipated population growth over the next 10 years. By not addressing the issue, the prospect of Southern Highlands Netball not being able to run a competition at full capacity is a genuine concern. After a stressful summer of bushfires and COVID lockdown, 420 players in our community were willing to return to netball. That reaffirmed to me that people need sport for a variety of reasons. You need to provide the women of this shire with the opportunity to have a physical outlet. And yes, I'm well aware that there are many sporting codes that include women. However, netball is the #1 female-dominated sport across the country. Southern Highlands Netball boasts the biggest numbers in female sport in our region. We are building courts that are compliant with the current Netball Australian standards. Our new line marking will enable the association to cater to all levels of ability and create new offerings to our community like Fast 5 and walking netball for those of us who hurt just getting out of bed but still absolutely love the game. Having fully functioning courts again would allow us to hold mini carnivals throughout the netball season, bringing with it visitors to our local area from Kiama, Goulburn, Shoalhaven, Wallandilly, just to name a few.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nolan. You have exceeded your time, but I think your message has come through very loud and clear, and you did very well. So
Thank you very much.
thank you. And as I say, we can't take questions, but thank you for participating.
Thank you for your time and thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We now move on to item point 18.2, notice of motion 34-2020, second bridge over railway line at Windsor Carraby Street, Barrel. And Mr. Matt Murphy will address council against the development. Now, we have a video, councillors, that he has asked to be shown as opposed to an address. That has been allowed, as we've had videos or slides in the council chambers. So Mr. Crawford will commence the presentation now.
Hi all, I'm a local father and businessman based in Barrel. Now with the pandemic giving me a chance to take a breather from my regular work, it's been great to try and do something else for my community, which for me has involved getting out and doing some pro bono work, marketing local businesses free of charge, and speaking to many different people. Now, these marketing materials that I've been created have showed a lot of Barrel's impressive archways. So those massive pin oak trees, historic buildings, and boutique shops on a backdrop of gum forest and native trees. The result is thousands of eyeballs getting excited, admiring our peaceful, tranquil surroundings. People say, "You live in Barrel? Barrel's beautiful, love it there." Now, we know that our landscape is a major natural attraction. It's part of our heritage and it's part of our identity. It's also a major economic consideration for our tourism industry. Our people are friendly, they are courteous, they are open and community minded. And I've got full respect for you, each of you, as our region's elected representatives. It can't be an easy job, must feel like a thankless job at times. But I am speaking on behalf not only of myself and my family, but also people that I've spoken to who have expressed concern at the plan to bulldoze and redevelop the entranceway around Barrel. People are concerned at the removal of the trees, but also the considerable number of car parks that are being removed, particularly from Barrel to Mittagong, which has considerably fewer residents. Finally, there is a major undercurrent of dissatisfaction around the lack of consultation from council to the public on this particular project. It's not just me saying it, it's widespread on social media, it's there and it's very real. And it's not a popular project by any stretch of the imagination. People don't feel listened to.
So my question to council is, given this lack of consultation and the feeling in the community, the changes in costs over its lifetime and the environmental impacts, would council consider going back to the community to see how they feel about this project? Thanks.
We will now move on to visitor items, and that is the review of determination in relation to 9.1. And I won't read it all, but it's for the purposes of vehicle sales and hire premises at Lot 6, DP 1226255 at 556 Argyle Street, Moss Vale. Now, we have a visitor item in relation to this. Mr. Dennis McManus will address council against the development, and then Mrs. Kathy Barnsley will address council in support of the development. So at this stage, I'll ask Mr. McManus if he is on screen. He's been run.
Hello, I'm here now.
Good afternoon, Mr. McManus. Can you hear?
Yes, I'm here now. I
All
can
right.
hear you.
Now, you're on loudspeaker. You have been placed on the table in the council temporary chambers, so you can address council from any time on and take questions. It's over to you, Mr. McManus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councils, for giving me the opportunity to speak on this matter, and I'll do so briefly. Mr. Mayor, my name again, Dennis McManus, and as you may know, I was a state government town planner for 15 years, and then before I retired, 25 years at the Heritage Council. Mr. Mayor, since 2011, I have been a community rep on the council's Heritage Advisory Committee, and I'm here today to represent that committee. Mr. Mayor, the council has before it a 53-page report. But look, on this matter, on the 556 Argyle Street, but it really comes down to this. This house, it was purchased by the current people in 2014 in the full knowledge that it was within a heritage conservation area. The house at that time was in a reasonable state, as you can see on the internet, but it has been allowed to deteriorate since. Mr. Mayor, the contention of the Heritage Advisory Committee is not that the house should now be kept, but that its replacement should be respectful to the Heritage Conservation Area listing, and seek to enhance this southern entrance area from Mossvale as set out in the DCP. The contention of the applicant about the low heritage value of the house is a complete red herring. And the reason for that is that the Heritage Advisory Committee and others are prepared to accept demolition, but only on the basis of a replacement with a building form that would be more respectful to the conservation area. And importantly, I think a very wide latitude is possible for such a new building. It does not need to be a residential building. It can be more than one story, and it can be built to the street alignment as nearby commercial heritage buildings are. Mr. Mayor, the applicant says that the building that they will be building sometime in the future, but they give no commitment to this, and in the meantime, the community is left with a tar-sealed site with absolutely minimal landscaping and no proposal to improve the appearance of the adjoining site which they own, and where cars are parked with no landscaping whatsoever. I'm sure all the councils in the room know this site quite well. Mr. Mayor, the irony here is that the Heritage Advisory Committee actually agrees to the demolition of this item and to the building of a new building in its place with a very wide latitude to its design. The applicant, on the other hand, is proposing a car sales yard with minimal landscaping, creating another missing tooth in this conservation area. This end of Mossvale and its conservation area really does deserve a better outcome, and the Heritage Committee confirms its recommendation that the DA should be refused. The grounds for refusal of the 2019 application, which was given in April of this year, were very clear, they're very cogent. It's further recommended, Mr. Mayor, that the applicant be advised of their option to build a new respectful building on the site, possibly extending to the existing car park adjacent. This is land they own. such a development would meet all of the DCP and heritage requirements and be a clear plus for this area at the southern entrance to Mossvale. Mr. Mayor, that's all I wish to say on the subject, and on behalf of the committee, I thank you and the other councillors.
Thank you very much, Mr. McManus. There are a couple of people who wish to ask questions. I'll ask Councillor McLaughlin, then Councillor Turlin. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Dennis, for your presentation. I was just wondering if you could expand a little bit on why you agreed with the earlier reasons that staff gave for the refusal of this DA by council staff, which was obviously in council's business paper.
Mr. McManus.
Yes, okay. Look, I don't have all of those things correctly in front of me, but look, the main thing, you'll have those yourself in the current 53-page report. I think the answers given at that time were very cogent. They went through one by one, and they included the heritage considerations. They included the information in the DCP, the considerations in the DCP. And they really, and the heart of the matter here is that it really is a conservation area. As I said, when they bought the site, this was well known. The applicant has made some suggestion that they were given an understanding at the beginning that the building could be demolished. And as I said, to some extent, this has proved to be a bit of a red herring. No one at the moment is saying that the building should be kept, to my knowledge. It's the issue about what happens next. It is quite unacceptable to the community, I think, to have just a car park where there could be a decent building built.
Thank you, Mr. McManus.
Thank you.
You happy with that, Councillor McLaughlin?
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Councillor Turlin. You're on mute, Councillor Turlin.
You're quite happy for the building to come down because it's got no heritage value. You're just worried that it's going to be an open space car park, which is exactly what's right next to it, which is probably 2 blocks of land. You just don't want a 3rd block of land to be a vacant space. Is that how I understand it?
Mr. McManus.
Councillor Turlin, you're picking up, yeah, that's right, exactly in relation to the house. Now, you're referring to the blocks next door. I'm
Yes.
not sure the history on those, but clearly, in previously times, there would have been buildings on those sites. But the issue here, Councillor Turlin, which is interesting, is it's one of those times when the Heritage Committee can see, well, look, here's a case for a new building, for a new, very respectful building. And I think even the applicants are being very coy about this. In the initial application, they did not. In the initial application, they referred just to car parking, not to this being a car sales yard. But curiously enough, a higher and best use for this site would be, in my view, a commercial building.
Yeah, but probably not at the moment. The way things aren't. Anyway, that's a commercial decision. And I would have thought that if and when a building DA comes in, that's when the conservation, being in the conservation zone, and the design of that building comes in at that stage, not to remove a building. That's what, anyway, I understand, that's right.
Okay, so thank you, Councillor Turlin. Any further questions from councillors? No? Then thank you.
Can I move the recommendation, please?
No, not yet, not yet. We've got a speaker for the recommendation, Ms. Kathy Barnsley. But Mr. McManus, thank you very much for your input. And
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So we'll have now Kathy, Ms. Kathy Barnsley, architect, and she will be speaking in favour, and then I'll be asking council staff to do an introduction and then open for a recommendation. Good afternoon, Ms. Barnsley. Got a speaker for the recommendation. Can we turn, Ms. Barnsley, I think you may have your background on. So if you can Ms. Kathy Barnsley, architect, and she will be speaking in favour, and then I'll be asking council staff to do an introduction and then open for a recommendation.
Can we get you to close Facebook for us, please?
Can we turn, Ms. Barnsley?
Yes,
I think you may have your.
my apologies. Yep.
Okay, let's try it again.
Sorry.
Good afternoon, Ms. Barnsley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, you're away you go, and you're prepared to take questions if necessary after?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Paul Wakeling from Mulsfell Motor Group settled on this purchase of the property from council in February 2017, along with the vacant site next door. He intends to use the site in the short term for car storage in association with the car sales business across the road, which is how he is continuing to also use the vacant site next door. When Mr. Wakeling bought the properties from council, it was on the understanding that he would remove the house so he could use these sites for commercial purposes. One of the main attractions was the rear access. As stated in the report to council, the house is vacant and dilapidated, which was its condition when purchased. It is primarily asbestos internally, and externally the original cladding has been covered up with plastic cladding. It has been squatted in by drug dealers and has been boarded up to prevent this. It is a nuisance to the area, and two separate house movers were not interested in removing it to another site. The primary reason for the original application being refused was on heritage grounds. The house has none of its own heritage value. However, the heritage consultant felt it made a contribution to the streetscape in the conservation area. However, as a standalone house, it does not contribute to the streetscape in any way, as it does not relate to any of the adjacent buildings, which on the same side of the street are all shopfront buildings built on the front boundary, and opposite are commercial buildings set back from the road. The residential zoning starts two properties to the south, so it sits amongst commercial buildings in the business zone quite incompatibly. Landscaping will enhance the block once the house is removed. All other areas of concern for council have been satisfied with the amended submission. In these times of economic downturn, Mulsfell Motor Group is one business which is continuing to provide significant employment in Mulsfell. There are 55 employees and 8 apprentices working in this business, including the staff at the recently acquired Allen Mackay Autos. We would hope that council would support Mulsfell Motor Group as a business which wants to continue to spend money locally, providing employment and apprenticeships to local youth. This block will allow flexibility in negotiations with other motor vehicle brands to expand the business. We hope that you agree with the recommendation of council staff to approve the review of determination. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barnsley. Question, Councillor McLaughlin. You're on mute, Councillor McLaughlin.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Barnsley. As you may realise, I called this item up to council, being chair of Heritage. And look, as you probably heard Dennis say, none of us have any problem with the removal of this property, given its state. But you would appreciate that when this, as was stated by Mr. McManus, when this property was bought, the owners would be aware it was in a heritage conservation area. And with that regard, we are just looking, as you as an architect as well, could have a look at really what could be done on that site. If the consolidation of 3 blocks were there, I imagine it would open up a whole different economic opportunity for the business across the road. Would you like to comment on that, please?
Yes. Yes, so those blocks, there's actually only 2 blocks. The vacant block currently is 1 block. That's not 2.
Okay.
There is long-term plans for some further development of this block, subject block. But Nothing has been decided as yet. The main reason for this exercise is to get rid of something that is a real nuisance and a real problem. Because of its dilapidated state, it is very difficult to maintain, can't be maintained. It's beyond repair.
Sure.
And so we really want to clean up the site so that we don't have pieces of asbestos falling down all over the place, people squatting in it, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really a matter of cleaning up the site and then utilizing it for vehicle storage. It's not planned to be utilized initially or at the moment for vehicle sales. It's not planned for that. It's going to be for vehicle storage, which is what the other site is being used for now. But it'll be in a clean landscaped site instead of a house falling down around.
Sure. Can I suggest, Kathy, that a deferred commencement, if you were to put in the meantime, something to show the Heritage Committee that you were going to address that site such that we could be satisfied that this was a short-term operation to store cars there, and that we were going to see something that was going to be appropriate in a heritage conservation area, even if, you know, you put that in and we had deferred commencement on that, I would be very impressed, and the Heritage Committee would be more than pleased to see something go back in a Heritage Committee, in a heritage precinct of Moss Vale, rather than knocking another tooth out of the main street of Moss Vale, if you understand what I'm saying. You're an architect, you could design something, you could bring something forward.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Okay, leading the witness, sorry about that.
Been asked, Ms Barnsley and then Councillor Turley.
Yes, at the moment, there are no plans for what the future development will be. So it would be completely speculative and probably a wasted exercise at this point, because there isn't a brief for what will happen there eventually.
Okay.
So there's no.
Thank you.
To that now.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Barnsley. Councillor Turley, question?
Well, I hope I get the same latitude to just go to the other councillor. But anyway, notwithstanding that fact, Ms Barnsley, we understand that when you lodge a DA for a building, you get 5 years before you actually have to start the commencement. And it would be unrealistic to be looking 5 years in the future in a pandemic, COVID-19, to be looking at building anything at this current stage. Would you agree with what I've just said?
100%. Yes, that's exactly right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Thank you, Ms Barnes. Any other questions? Councillor Halstead.
Yeah, very short one, and in not way meant to be in any particular direction or take it in any particular frame of mind. Kathy, I assume you are mindful of heritage values of the district.
Of course, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Halstead. No more questions to Ms Barnsley. Councillor Turley, question?
No, I'm moving the recommendation.
No, hang on, Rob. I'll come back to you. Thank you, Ms Barnsley, for your presentation, and we'll see how the debate unfolds. I think because of the contention of this, I'll ask for a council staff introduction. So we will say farewell, Ms Barnsley.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Through the Chair, the purpose of this report is to consider a Section 8.2 review determination of Code 200306, which seeks consent for the demolition of a building and carrying out of works at 556 Argyle Street, Moss Vale. The land is currently occupied by a dilapidated 1930s weatherboard cottage built on 740 square metres of parcel of land. The site is surrounded by a mixture of commercial premises, including vehicle sales premises, and also professional architects to the south and the Moss Vale Community Centre to the southwest. Council to be aware that the current building was sold by the council approximately 10 years ago, where it was previously used as a family daycare centre. The current owner has always sought to transform the site into a vehicle sales and storage yard, consistent with the adjoining use to the north.
Got you, Councillor Turley. Councillor McLaughlin, sorry.
Whilst the building is within the Moss Vale Heritage Conservation Area, the building itself is not heritage listed, nor is it a contributory building to the overall heritage fabric of the streetscape, which is bookended by zero lot line sided commercial buildings to the north and also to the immediate south of the site. Councillors will also be aware that the application was previously refused by council staff, citing issues including lack of detailed landscaping plans, stormwater disposal, and also potential heritage issues. The proponent has provided additional detailed information addressing these concerns raised in the earlier determination of the 8th of April 2020. And it's now considered that the current application has merit and has been recommended for approval on this occasion.
Thank you, Mr. Wilton. Are there questions to, yes, I've got you, Councillor McLaughlin. To Mr. Wilton, Councillor McLaughlin. You're on mute, Councillor McLaughlin.
I wanted to move option 1, please.
No, I want Councillor Turland has flagged.
Oh, you said that would happen after the introduction.
Yes, I know. Said twice, I am trying to be as fair. I do ask councillors, please do not flag recommendations even before a presentation has.
I didn't. I did it when you told me after council staff did the introduction. So yeah. I'm moving option 1 as the recommendation.
Okay. Councillor Turland was in before you.
No, but no, he wasn't at the right time. It had to be after Mr. Wilton.
Councillor Turland, question. You've muted, you're on mute, Councillor Turland.
Myself, somebody's muting for me. The plan shows clearly that the hard stand on the other block of land, the only way that you can gain access to it is from Mossvale Road or from the back of the laneway that leads in relation to this house. So one would think that they will have to be consolidated at a later date because there'll be no access to lot 3, the bitumen hardstand car park.
So the question is?
Well, the question is, when it's consolidated, the only access through, if a building's going to be built, will have to be through the back alleyway into lot 2 and lot 3. That's it.
That is correct. That is correct. Now, just on this motion, I've got 2 councillors who feel they're both in the right. The presentation hasn't finished by staff.
Well, now it's finished. I'll move option 1.
I'm sorry, councillor.
I'll move option 1.
I am asking.
Move option 1. I'm the first in.
I have any questions.
I'll move option 1.
Councillor McLaughlin.
I'll speak to it then. Thank you.
That Councillor Turland will have the right to move it. The questions still have not finished, and I'm trying to ask councillors to wait until presentations are finished and addresses before there is a motion moved. Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question, if I may. I read in the report that a driveway was surrendered as part of this. Going forward, when a DA does come in, will a driveway be able to be, assuming the block is consolidated with its neighbour, will a driveway be able to be applied for in a suitable location? I'm inclined to think that that might be a straight-through driveway.
We'll ask the question. Mr. Wilton.
Through the Chair, the access and egress is proposed to be via the rear laneway at this point in time. If the block is consolidated, they may be able to utilise the existing access off Argyle Street.
Yes, or make application to slide it across to line up with the rear access. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For Mr. Wilton, I'm sure that I know the answer to this, but this recommendation that's in front of us now, even though it mentions towards the end for the purpose of vehicle sales or hire premises, it's purely for the demolition of this building. Is that correct?
Yes. Mr. Wilton, through the
Chair, the application before us this evening is purely for the demolition of the building.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McLaughlin.
I'll move a recommendation, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, seeing we've finished questions, and I'm moving option number 1.
Councillor McLaughlin, I can hear your passion in this debate.
Well, Well, I did call it up, Mr. Mayor, and I called it up for a reason. I think it's only reasonable that I be able to have move the recommendation.
Then I have ruled prior that I was going to allow Councillor Turlin, but am requesting in future that presentations and questions be finished. Councillor Turlin is moving it. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Andrews. Now, Councillor McLaughlin, you have the right to move an amendment, but
I'll move the amendment, but I think you're quite incorrect, Mr. Mayor. You said one thing and you've done something else. You said after questions you take a recommendation when they've finished, and well, they've finished. All right, I'll move the amendment be option number 1.
Councillor,
it's a direct negative.
It is a direct as
Negative.
Well, I'll foreshadow it then.
Councillors, Councillor Turlin has a second.
See, this is why I should have moved my option 1 first. I brought this to council. I put my hand up at the right time. Councillor Turlin foreshadowed it when you told him he couldn't, and now you're letting him move this recommendation. It's wrong. Procedurally, you said one thing and you've done something else.
McLaughlin, I am asking you to refrain from further comment. You have the right to move an amendment as a foreshadowed motion, because if it doesn't get up, and it may be the recommendation, but yours is a direct negative. Councillor Turlin, you have the right to speak.
Just making sure I'm not on mute. Well, this has gone on long enough. This is one house to be pulled down because it's dilapidated. You know, I find it extraordinary that people seem to think they have a right to dominate a commercial venture and say we have to do a design now on something that might never be built at a cost at the developer's point of view. Do you mind, Mr. McLaughlin?
Go ahead.
You.
Councillor McLaughlin is now on mute. So
okay, thank you. Thank you. So what we have is a situation where the developer who's bought this land off council, these properties and the house has been sitting there for many, many years as vacant, sold by council and then tied up in knots by a councillor who calls it up. Absolutely crazy. It's about time. If you want to get us out of this pandemic and fire, we need to move forward with people who are keen to have employment in the Shire and actually bring jobs to the Shire. What we have at the moment, and it's been going on since 2017, it seems, when it was bought, that we tie them up in knots. This has gone on for over nearly 12 months, this particular DA process. And it shouldn't have gone on this long. What it should have done is allowed the developer who bought the land off council, paid good money for it, is to move forward with how he spent his money, not to start now developing a plan that he might not build in 5 years. So then he loses his development approval after spending probably $100,000 on drawings, different engineering certificates and so on and so on. Ridiculous. Again, it's exactly what we shouldn't be doing, is tying up in knots with a bloke who actually employs and has apprentices. And we tie it up in knots because we don't want to see the tooth removed. The tooth is rotten, it's had it, it's past its date. And eventually somewhere down the line, I would assume this developer will sell this land to somebody who will develop it when times become better, or he might develop it himself. But for the short term, it's always been a car park on one side, and the house really needs to be removed now, not wait for another 2 or 3 or 5 years and not get the developer having to spend a lot of money on something might never be built. That's ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turlin. Councillor McLaughlin.
Well, I'll speak against the motion, won't I? I mean, Parramatta Road, here we come. And Councillor Turlin talking about recovery and what we need to build. We need to build. We certainly need to build. Councillors, can I say we got this right last time? These people bought this property knowing full well it was in a heritage conservation area. We have got every right under the DCP, as council staff originally said, this is not what we want to see in our main street. Now, if it was in Parramatta Road, you've got them on this side, you've got them on that side. And if that's what you want to have in Moss Vale, in a heritage conservation area, then you will support this. If you think that this is not appropriate, like it wasn't appropriate last time, I don't know what happened. Did we change planners? Suddenly, we have a turnaround. All those things that were put in place, which are on council's DCP, that looks at what we're trying to do in the main street to maintain a heritage conservation area in Moss Vale, is just thrown out the window. To have cars parked on both sides of the road, I think really detracts. Now, as you heard, we are not against the demolition of this property, but surely there is a better outcome and a better proposal that could be put forward. And in the short term, it could be used for, but we need to know it's not going to have this vague idea that something will be built sometime in the future, which might never happen. So it might be just storage for cars, and then signs will go up or what have you, and it will turn into Parramatta Road, Moss Vale. It'll be a used car sale lot for how long, we don't know. And I'm just saying to you, councillors, look, we can refuse this today. We can ask the proponent to have a look at what they've got. If they consolidate those blocks, they've got an opportunity to do something worthwhile, to build, to have units. We all know there's a housing bubble going on in the Southern Highlands. What perfect opportunity to build above with have a shop front, commercial at the front, to have units on the top. I'm sure Kathy Barnsley could design some beautiful things that could happen. Now, they don't have to happen straight away, but talking about a commercial venture, I think this adds value to the main street. It would create jobs. It would give a better return than just parking cars on it, I would suggest. So, councillors, I'm asking you, refuse this and let these people come back with a realistic DA that looks at doing something positive in Moss Vale Main Street rather than knocking another tooth out. We need to put the teeth back in that heritage conservation area with a nice building that can take up that whole block, that can be built to the road, that can be commercial, can be residential on the back. It would be an ideal site.
Any speakers again? Paul? Look, I'm going to say something in relation to this in support of the DA. I advocated and have advocated for the sale of council's operational land that was surplus to our needs way back when. Out of that, we raised about $2.5 million out of those sales, and this is one of the blocks. I would not have put up the suggestion for the sale of operational land if there were conditions on it that it couldn't be used as legally by the purchaser. The purchaser has the right to use this land in the best interest of his investment. So I have no dramas with that land being used. If it is hard stand for cars, well, so be it.
What about our DCP, Mr. Mayor?
McLaughlin, I am speaking. It is zoned and correctly. It has met all the requirements. And the reason I believe it has taken so long to get this far is that there has been so many misnomers with the boundary adjustment, drainage, and it took years to sort out. And I believe this would have come to council very soon after the original purchase, if that had been done. So I'm speaking in favour of it. Councillor Andrews, you had your hand up. You're on mute. You are muted, Councillor Andrews.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I obviously wasn't quick enough. Just very, very briefly, look, I made the point in questioning Mr. Wilton. We're dealing with a demolition here. We're not dealing or suggesting to a future development and the owner of the property what he should and shouldn't do. Just the comment was made, do something positive for Moss Vale. There couldn't be anything more positive than a new commercial venture, no matter what it is, with construction, employment, retailers benefit, and what could be more positive than future employment once whatever construction goes on this site is complete. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Turlin, do you have the right to reply if you wish?
Thank you. Look, the issue is when you read the recommendation, it's for the demolishing of one house on one block of land. That's it. We're getting ourselves tied up in knots with the Heritage Committee, and Councillor McLaughlin thinks we're in the conservation zone, that we should be looking at both the blocks, designing a retail outlet there. It's too early. It's not the right time for the Heritage Committee to be involved in anything yet. It is removing one house. That's it, on one block. And to think that we've actually dragged this through the whole process for nearly 12 months now, when it's removing an old home on a one block of land. But what we seem to have now, when you read option 1, it's physically just to remove it. It doesn't mention anything in the recommendation option 1 that Councillor McLaughlin wants to put forward, that we combine both lots and do a design, a brand new design. It's not there. It's not requested.
It's up to the owners.
Do you mind, Mr. McLaughlin?
Councillor,
did you not do the training last week, Councillor McLaughlin?
Councillor Turlin, councillors, can you please put your microphone on mute after you've spoken in case you inadvertently make comment? Councillor Turlin.
Well, I don't think it's inadvertently. It's quite common practice, it seems. Now, the issue is this is a simple removal of a house, an old home that council sold, not to redevelop it, not to have the intervention by the Heritage Committee. It's not a design of anything yet. And right beside it, there's a paddock that council sold, a car park, hard stand, which is going to be exactly the same as this block. We're not combining both blocks. It's one block, one old house to be removed. It's exactly what we should be doing. And we shouldn't be tying the developer who wants to spend money in this shire for the benefit of the people he employs for the people of Arbo Shire. And what we do is we tie the knots on a dream that something might happen down the path that only lasts 5 years. It's ridiculous. It should have been approved 12 months ago. Yours.
Thank you, Councillor Turlin. I will put the recommendation. All in favour of the recommendation. It's a planning matter, so all in favour, please raise your green stickers, green ticks. So the voting for the motion is Councillor Halstead, Whipper, Scandrett, Turlin, Andrews and Gare. Those against? Councillor McLaughlin. I declare the motion carried. And we will let Councillor Nelson back in. So when Councillor Nelson is rejoining the meeting. Okay, we move on to 11.1. Hang on.
Page 55, Mr. Mayor.
Oh yeah, I'm on page 55. Development application, subdivision of land and carrying out of works to create lot 12 lots and carrying out of works for purpose of road, Old Widgelow Road, Bundaberg. Do you wish for Councillor McLaughlin?
I'll move the recommendation.
Introduction, Mr. Mayor, please.
Okay, councillors, we are trying to prove a point to the chair in relation to this. We have a presentation. Councillor McLaughlin, you have the permission to move the recommendation, right? But please, can I ask councillors to follow the procedure that was given to us last week and listen to before anything is moved or discussed.
It didn't work last time.
Comments from staff. Councillors, I'm going to ask staff to do a presentation because this we have received a letter in relation to this from the applicant. So I'll ask Mr. Wilton to introduce the item.
Through the Chair, the purpose of this report is to consider application 201139, which seeks development consent for the purposes of a 12-lot subdivision at 102 to 104 Old Winslow Road, London. The site is zoned R2 residential under the Winch Caribbean Local Environment Plan 2010 and further provides for a minimum lot size of 700 square metres. Councillors be aware that a former DA was lodged for the site in October 2018 under DA 191088 under the exact merits of the current application. That application was subsequently withdrawn by the applicant and Council imposed by resolution an interim heritage order over the current site. At the meeting of the 14th of August 2019, Council resolved to extend the interim heritage order and further prepare a planning proposal to heritage list the current site. Planning proposal relating to the heritage listing has received a gateway determination by the Department of Planning, Industry and Environment and is currently on exhibition for public comment. The current proposal lodged on the 17th of April 2020 seeks consent for the subdivision of one lot into 12 lots ranging in size from 700 square metres to 3,821 square metres, being the lot containing the existing homestead. The majority of the lots ranging in size from 700 to 1,000 square metres approximately. The application has been identified as deficient in a number of areas, including agricultural assessment, ecology assessment, hydraulics, and also sewer and water modelling to ascertain the capacity of council sewer system, and also the applicant's, despite a request for further information has been provided under clause 54 of the EP&A reg. The applicant has advised that they shall not be providing this information as requested by staff. The notification period was undertaken between the 4th of May and also the 25th of May 2020, with a total of 4 submissions being received during that period. Those submissions have relevantly detailed issues concerning traffic, pedestrian issues, infrastructure capacity, tree removal, local character, and also visual amenity, neighbourhood amenity, flora and fauna impacts, and also boundary fencing. Responses to those submissions have been detailed on pages 73 and 74 of the report this evening. And council staff assess the application in accordance with section 4.15 of the Environment Planning Assessment Act, and given the expected heritage impacts and also the limitations on specialist reports submitted and uncertainties around servicing of the development, council staff have recommended refusal of the application on this occasion.
Thank you. Questions to Mr. Wilton? Councillor Turl.
It made it clear in our briefing sessions, I'm just trying to find the page, that this particular or similar to the application is in the Land and Environment Court tomorrow and Friday. Is it for a hearing? Is that correct?
Through the Chair, the applicant has taken a Class 1 proceeding based on deemed refusal on this application for a 12-lot subdivision in the New South Wales Land and Environment Court. I understand as party to those proceedings, the applicant has sought to reduce the number of lots from 12 lots down to 4 lots. But as part of this application before council this evening, there's been no representation made by the proponent to reduce the number of lots formally relating to this proposal.
So just can I, another question, not question, just a clarification, please?
Yes. Yes.
So what this particular application in front of us here is in the Land and Environment Court for deemed refusal after 40 days. In the process of the court, possibly with agreement, the developer, who I don't know who he is, has dropped it down from 14 blocks to 4 or 7 from 4.
Through the Chair, it's been reduced from 12 lots down to 4 lots in the Land and Environment Court, but they are separate proceedings to the matter that's being considered by council tonight.
Right.
No, but is this, so what you're trying to explain to me, if others as well, is that the Land and Environment Court case doesn't relate to this development, this DA?
Application.
This DA?
Through the Chair, the proceedings are on foot at the moment that are happening on Thursday and Friday this week relate to the development application as a deemed refusal.
Yeah.
Okay. Within those proceedings, they've sought to reduce the number from 12 lots to 4 lots.
But council has not been notified officially by the proponent, so we are obligated to determine the 12 lots that are before us, unless as it's been refused or supported. Councillor Nelson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, that's what I was clarifying, that this application is a deemed refusal because after 40 days, they took it to the Land and Environment Court. Is that correct?
Is that
Through the Chair, that is correct. And just by way of clarification, we also have another 5-lot subdivision that's currently on the books for this current site under DA 210291, which the applicant has also submitted in relation to this site.
Okay, so what council is virtually doing tonight is taking a position. So Councillor McLaughlin has indicated that he is moving it, but this is the last time I will take a motion and I will refuse a councillor the right to move a motion if they try and do it prior to the finalisation of questions or address. Councillor McLaughlin, you're moving it. Do you have a seconder?
Yes.
Councillor Whipper. You have the right to speak, Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, well, I thought I'd better jump in early after last time, but I won't do it again. Thanks for that. Look, councillors, we went and had a look at this site. You read through the report. Council staff have put together all the reasons, and they're massive amount of reasons why this DA should be refused tonight. Given that the same owners have already had a 30-lot subdivision behind this property, substantial development has gone on around that. To actually envisage cutting up the front of that property, which we visited, and all the gardens and the aspects of that house would be destroyed. So with this 12-lot subdivision. So obviously these people got their 30-lot subdivision. They don't want to talk to council. It looks as if they just want to take it to the Land and Environment Court and try and win it there. So councillors, I think we've got no other option but to go along with staff's refusal for the reasons. And we've got another one coming forward, and we'll see how we deal with that. Maybe that one represents a much better interpretation of what they want to do. But I still have some real concerns with a proposed heritage listed item having its curtilage reduced so much that all the garden disappears. So, councillors, I hope you'll support this refusal, and all the reasons are there. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Turwood. You're on mute, Councillor Turwood.
Yep. Okay, I'm recommending an amendment, and that is exactly as the words you've got there to where it says refusal, and put deferral until after the outcome of the Land and Environment Court case Thursday and Friday this week.
Okay, do you have a seconder for your amendment? I'll ask again, is there a seconder for the amendment? Then it lapses through the want of a seconder. Is there any more speakers in favour of the recommendation? Then I will put the recommendation. All in favour, please raise your card. So that's councillors Halstead, Whipper, Scandrett, Andrews, McLaughlin, Nelson and Gare. Those against, I declare the motion carried. We now move to 11.1, page 80. Tender for Berrimah Road Deviation Project, high voltage relocation. There's a recommendation there. Councillor Nelson and Councillor McLaughlin are moving option. You're on mute, Councillor Nelson.
Happy to move number 1, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, happy to second that.
Okay, so that is that the deviation tender recommendation be supported. I'll ask all in favour of.
No, I've got a question which I've asked in the briefing sessions.
Thank you, councillor Turtle.
The question I've asked is how much we've spent on consultants today in relation to this project, this tender.
Councillor, I'll ask that to the acting general manager.
Councillor, I don't have that answer to that question. It was asked about, 15 minutes before we adjourned to come back to this meeting, so I don't have the answer at this stage.
It'll be taken on notice.
I'll come back to you, Councillor. I'll take it on notice. I'll come back to you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, can you ensure that? Mr. Mayor, can you ensure that happens? Like ASAP? I know it can't be tonight.
Thank you, councillor Howson. It will be put in the weekly circular.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions before I put that recommendation? Then I put it all in favour of point 1, recommendation 1. Councillors Halstead, Whipper, Turlin, Scandrett, Andrews, McLaughlin, Nelson, carried unanimously. I'll ask the acting general manager to read that recommendation first.
So, Councillor, the recommendation you've just passed is contained in the closed committee report as follows. The Council accepts the tender from Endeavour Energy Network Unregulated Partnership, trading as AusConnect, a lump sum of $870,688 inclusive of GST to undertake the Derma Road Deviation Project high voltage relocation.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. We now move on to 11.2, page 85, adoption of the space strategy. And I'll ask Ms. Ford to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the chair, the draft place-based strategy is a vision for play areas in the Shire and provides guidance to council on the future provision, development, and maintenance of its playgrounds. In accordance with council resolution, the draft place-based strategy was placed on public exhibition from 10th of June to 19th of July 2020. Community engagement activities included a Your Say Wingy Caribou page, notices posted at the Civic Center and public libraries, notification emails were sent to high interest groups, and posters were placed at all play spaces within the Shire. Council received a total of 76 submissions. Upon thorough review, the key findings were comments related to play experience received the highest number of respondents. These comments surrounded commentary about council's existing play spaces being outdated, unimaginative, and had sad-looking equipment. It highlighted a need or desire for upgraded play spaces that are larger, with more variety and more challenging equipment. It also requested that council focus on providing play spaces that cater to a number of age groups. Secondly, most popular commented item was on a destination play space. To this, the community expressed a very strong desire for the provision of an adventure or destination style play space within the Shire as soon as possible, or certainly within the next 10 years. The draft place-based strategy aligns with the aspirations of the community in that the overall intent of the document is to improve existing play values along with identifying a destination play space for the Shire within the next 10 years. It is also important to note that through the feedback, we noted some confusion about council's intent to remove certain playgrounds at the end of useful life in favor of embellishing the remaining playgrounds. It seems some interpreted this to be about the sale of parkland. It is important to note that the draft place-based strategy does not make recommendations about sale of land. Indeed, the intent is that when a play space is removed at its end of useful life, that the land be returned for passive recreation for use by the community as a park. The draft place-based strategy has been amended in line with the prevalent community feedback and is submitted to council tonight with a recommendation to adopt.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ford. Is there any question, councillor Turlin, to Ms. Ford?
Yeah, no, it's not on mute. What we don't actually have anywhere selected for this final destination park. Have you got any suggestions of where that might be?
Through the acting general manager, Ms. Ford.
Through the chair. What the destination play space should be centrally located with easy access by the majority of residents and visitors of the Shire. It would be ideally located in proximity to other visitor attractions or community facilities, and potentially in one of the main CBD areas. An overall master plan would need to be prepared for the site, and the council officers do not have a location selected at this point in time.
Any other questions? Councillor
No.
Councillor Nelson.
Yes, could the staff member advise where there is a park? I think it was mentioned at Orange, and the requirements for car parking.
It's a long way from here. Ms. Ford?
Yes, look, there were a number of locations that were advised by the community that were popular, none of which were here in the Shire, but there was areas in Wollongong, in Goulburn, in Sydney, as being popular locations where our community will travel outside the Shire to attend a destination play space.
Thank you. Any more questions, Councillor Scandrett? And then I'll go around before I come back to you, Councillor Turner.
Yes, I'm very pleased to see Cook Street Mittagong back in, Ms. Ford. Could you just confirm the likely budget? I think you've got it marked for 2021.
Ms. Ford?
Yep,
Yeah,
through the chair. Yep. Through the chair, yes, the Cook Street Play Space is in the Capital Works program for 2021 to be constructed, and that, according to the play space strategy, would be a play space level of service 3, and the cost estimate there would be from $65,000 to $90,000.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With regard to the Botanic Gardens in Bowral, I understand that they have a place space in that area. I was just wondering what your thoughts are with regard to, I know some of those areas in other places facilitate what is envisaged as a major area to use for PlayStations.
Through you, Acting General
Play
Manager.
space.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin.
Through the chair, yes, I've heard comment that there are destination play spaces at other botanic gardens. However, our Southern Highlands Botanic Gardens master plan only included provision for the scope of playground that is currently constructed there, not for the scale of a destination playground.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and they have very comfortable bucket swings, Councillor McLaughlin. Any other questions to Ms. Ford? Councillor Turlin?
One most important question that everybody's asking the community is when we're going to open up the David Woods playground again.
Ms. Ford?
Look, I think I might comment on that. Councillor Turlin, it's a little off topic, but I understand why you're asking the question. I've had a conversation today with the relevant manager in regard to that. We've had issues with the contractor we want to use to do the softball there. They're a Victorian company and they're obviously not able to get out of Victoria. Now, that can't go on. I've given an instruction today that if we can't resolve that with that contractor prior to Christmas, that we'll need to make some other arrangements, and that one may well be that we make some temporary repairs there and open the playground, and the upgrade or improvement to the softball that we're proposing might come in a couple of years' time.
What was that last bit? I missed it, sorry.
The major improvement to the softball there might be deferred for a couple of years. We might make good, make it work, and come back to that space when we actually upgrade it in a couple of years' time.
Is there nobody in New South Wales that can do it?
It's a very specialised type of rubber softball we want to use, I'm led to believe. It has a 10-year warranty. There are no companies or contractors in New South Wales that provide this type of softball that has a 10-year warranty. They generally don't have warranty anywhere near that. So we were looking to have a better outcome in terms of the longevity of it. So it's a different type of softball. It's a very specialised softball, as I understand.
Right. Thank you. Councillor Whipper, then Councillor McLaughlin.
So, Mr. Mayor, this isn't really a question. I was going to move the motion. This is a very clumsy way of doing it. I'm not sure when people are finishing holding this card up, when they're finishing questions or not. But
any other questions? Councillor McLaughlin? You're on mute, Councillor McLaughlin.
Sorry, yep. Centennial Park, at some stage, I've asked for that to be formalised, the car parking there. It's now extensively used by cricket players, dog walkers. Can you give me an idea what's happening with the play facilities there, please?
We're talking on a strategy, councillors. We're not talking individual projects. But
Okay.
I'll allow the question, but please keep them to the topic.
Okay.
We'll take that on notice and come back to you. We don't have an answer.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Halstead.
Yeah, I'm wanting to ask you a question, Mr. Mayor. I'm not at this stage want to involve the staff, but I'm just wondering if you understand the complexity of, or maybe I'll rephrase that, whether you understand the community concern about this whole proposal. I'll probably just leave it at that at this stage, other than to add that I think it's been very heavy-handed, and I'll leave it at that. So I'm after your feedback on this one.
Okay, we'll take that as a comment. Now,
Happy with that.
There is the recommendation that Councillor Whipper is moving. It is point 4. Taking in that consideration, the council will not sell or dispose of any identified land contained within the play space strategy. So that's very definite. Question, Councillor Turlin?
No, mine's not a question. I'm going to move as a foreshadow, because it'll be a direct negative, I imagine, number 3, not to adopt this policy.
Well, hang on. We will. Have we got a question, Councillor Scandron? Councillor Scandron?
Just a second, Councillor Whipper.
Okay.
I remember 2008 very well.
We have a mover and a seconder. We have Councillor Turlin looking at a foreshadowed amendment, as it's going to be a direct negative. So, Councillor Whipper, what's your foreshadowed motion, Councillor Turlin?
It's on page 90, and we'd not adopt that the play. You sorry?
The option 3, that the play space.
Yeah, it's on page 90. Yep.
That's a direct negative, so subject to the motion, it will be then debated. Councillor Whipper.
thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think this is a very sound proposal. I take a lot of comfort from the fact that we've written into the recommendation that we're not selling off any of the land at all. I think that's really important to give the community comfort and the reassurance that this is not another fire sale of community land. But I think there's a certain degree of wisdom in consolidating resources to provide better quality parks and play spaces. So I think it's a wise step to move forward. And with that land that's being left as open space, obviously there'll be a number of opportunities to utilise that for community benefit in a number of ways. The important thing is that community will still be the owners of that land. So I'm happy to support this and look forward to the building of better quality parks in the future, so that the community can benefit from those, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whipper. Councillor Nelson. You're on mute, Councillor Nelson.
Mr. Mayor, is there anyone that wants to speak against it? Oh, I'm speaking for it.
Okay, well, Councillor Turlin, do you wish to speak against it? Councillor Turler, then Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, what we've got is about $11 million over the next 20 years to redevelop all these parks. And I get that some of them are beyond their date. But what I'm very frustrated with at the moment is that where we have areas that should have parks now and working for the people within that area, we have no plan. What we have is a plan that says we might replace it in the future, and we might not, depending on the demographics of the people in that area at a later date. But what is really concerning is we're talking about, we have no strategy for this amazing adventure park to happen in the future. Now that to me is what we should have been, what you should be talking about tonight is what was the bigger plan? What was the space? Where was it? How much was it going to cost? And what we've got is a 20-year plan, and I agree with that, that's fine. But at the same time, the problems that we faced at the David Woods and other places in Mittagong and Moss Vale had gone on too long. They needed to be fixed a lot earlier. And so I don't think the public are happy with this particular strategy at this point in time. I understand why it's there. I understand why the documents are there so that you can apply for government grants if they come through. But at this time, without having a plan for this adventure park somewhere in the future, we don't know where it's going to go. We've got no position. We've got no budget for it. And we really don't have a budget for any of this stuff as well because it's never been in our budget. Anyway, so my view is that we should put this on the shelf a bit longer and consultate with the community again early next year.
Thank you, Councillor Turner and Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm happy to support this. I added a recommendation to this that unfortunately went to the Sport and Rec, although I think it is a fantastic play station. Councillors, if you ever get the opportunity to take your grandchildren to a pump park, you'll see how much fun they are and how just everyone can be involved in one of those. So I'm hoping in the future that we'll have that opportunity, because if you get the opportunity to go to one and see that a 2-year-old can use it and a 15-year-old and adults can use it with their kids, they're a fantastic thing for the community. And they, just like we see the skate parks in Moss Vale, have really, and I've had a lot of good feedback from people that said what a great community thing to do for the young people. So right across the board, I think this is a good policy, and let's hope we can put our hand up once it's out there so that we can get some grants so we can improve some of our play stations and our play parks. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, I was going to speak, Mr. Mayor. I just gave the opportunity to the objector first.
Sorry, I jumped in.
Yeah. Look, I'd say that this is a detailed, comprehensive report. It includes quality feedback from the community, and the staff should be congratulated for this report. And I refute what Councillor Turlin said about no plan at all. Secondly, the community can be confident, 100% confident, that council's not, and I repeat, not selling any of the parkland detailed in the report where playground is being removed. Those parklands will be used for open space, as people have already said, where you can kick a football around, run around, or lay around. Also, the community spoke and desire improvements. 73% of the submission supported the intent of the draft strategy, and that's outlined on page 86 of the report. But if you want improvements, Mr. Mayor, of your parks and upgrades to outdated, unimaginative and sad-looking equipment, then you need to find some money. And later in the business paper, you can see that council's already finding $80,000 to resurface netball courts at Erridge Park. Also, if you could agree to sell a pocket park, Mr. Mayor, that's unused, vacant, doing nothing, council could significantly improve Bruley Park at Moss Vale and other parks in the Shire, possibly. Also, Bruley Park is a level 2 playground and needs $200,000 to $350,000. The playground's 20 years old and requires renewal. Other Mossvale playgrounds are required at Seymour Park, Church Road and Ritchie Park. So councillors, don't forget the community of Mossvale and support the sale of the unused pocket park when I bring it back to council. All I'll be asking is that an asset for an asset, Mr Mayor, and I'm sure you'd agree with that principle. So that's my position on the improvement to parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Halstead.
A simple one, Mr Mayor. The motion moved by Councillor Whipper, or the additional section on the recommendation, should make without any doubt reference to the land remaining classified as community. That wording's got to go into whatever he does there, because I think the community would be very sceptical of what went down here about 10, 12 years ago. Fire sale on public reserves. So I think we've got to be absolutely correct legally in terms of that definition.
Well, is there any wording that you would like to change there? I think it says pretty comprehensively, not sell or dispose of any identified land within the place-based strategy.
I understand that, but you can add in there somewhere, namely, it remain classified as community land. Simple. I'm sure the man on your left will word that one. Add one line to it.
Okay, I'll ask staff to put in a suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you can't reclassify land without a council resolution anyway, but I understand where Councillor Halstead's going. We can belt and brace her.
So we're going to put a few more 6-inch nails into a Councillor Halstead.
No, I think it's responsible, Mr Mayor, to be quite frank. And, you know, you have to cover the situation where, God help us, we get a councillor that has different points of view down the line and they don't understand what the words mean.
Okay, thank you. So Ms Richardson is just wording up an addendum and remain classified as community. Okay, that should tighten it up that little bit more, but I'll have to ask Councillor Whipper, are you happy to support that extra line condition?
Yeah, definitely, Mr Mayor. I think that just really makes it very clear to community that that nothing's going to change except that there's going to be some more open spaces. That's all. Yeah, no problem.
And Councillor Scandrett is the seconder who accepts it, but it's really the mover.
Well, it's the mover's decision, Mr Mayor, as you would know. But of course, thank you for asking. Yes.
Councillor Scandrett. Okay, is there any further debate?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I have raised my card twice, each time for 30 seconds. The tape will show that.
Thank you, Councillor Scandrett. Strange, Councillor Scandrett. Will you have the right to speak?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I, of course, do remember the flawed strategy, in my opinion, of selling off pocket parks and the like back in 2007, 2008, and how the community rose to that. And that's why I'm supporting Councillor Whipper's motion, because I think it neatly bookends this. And Councillor Halstead obviously has that memory as well because of his suggestion. But there's a couple of other bits to this. We need to start committing a firm budget to this. So, Mr Mooney, I hope that we see some of that in the pre-budget discussions next month. And of course, in last term, a motion went up for a number of outdoor fitness centres across the Shire. I think 11 of those are still to be delivered, and a lot of those could be in these locations. They're fitness, outdoor fitness equipment for, well, not only older people, but young people who might be attending near a playground, for example. So I hope, Mr Mooney, we can address that in next month's deliberations for our wish list for next year. Thank you.
Thank you, and I don't believe it's on the agenda as such. But we have a recommendation moved by councillor Whipper. All those in favour of the recommendation, please raise your card. Councillors Whipper, Turlin, Scandrett, Andrews, Nelson and McLaughlin and Gare. Those against? Are you voting, councillor Halstead?
Where is he?
I want to know what, I'm sitting right in front of you there. I can see you, so you must be able to see me.
Yes, I see
I'm
you.
just wondering what happened to Councillor Turlin's.
He voted for the recommendation.
No, it's a foreshadow.
Okay. I thought that was still coming.
A foreshadow motion, but if it gets carried, there is no foreshadow motion. So
No, I'll go along with it again.
Please raise your card of Councillor Whipper's recommendation. It is carried unanimously. Thank you. Now move to 11.3, proposed acquisition of land for easement Mossvale, page 98. Do we have a mover?
Yes, I'll move, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Nelson, seconded Councillor McLaughlin. Is there any discussion? Yeah, it goes into confidential.
Close council.
Yeah, okay, put it. All in favour, those against, carried. 11.5, proposed licence agreement with U3A Southern Highlands in
No, land acquisition 11.4.
11.4, page 99, land acquisition.
I'll happy to move that one too, Mr Mayor. It goes into closed council, considered in closed council.
Go into closed, put it.
I'm happy to second it.
Yeah, I'll put you down as seconder. All in favour, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Against, carried. Now we're on to 11.5.
Happy to move that.
Proposed licence agreement to U3A Southern Highlands Incorporated.
Second.
Yeah.
Move councillor Nelson, second again councillor Whipper.
Hang on, Mr Mayor. I said second. Now, do we have to put our cards
you-
up, or are you going to take it on the
No,
knob?
you were late. Councillor
I have
Whipper got in before
taken
you.
it and seconded it. It is not a world beater motion.
I'm just asking procedure.
I
Because before,
hear you, councillor Scandrett. I have put councillor Whipper as the seconder unless he wants to withdraw.
I don't mind that. That's fine. I'm just going to point out that when I raised my card previously, Mr Mayor, I was muted.
Well, if you're muted, you're muted. You can't second it.
No, Peter. Sorry, Councillor.
Excuse me. I'll put the recommendation. All in favour? Thank you. Carried. People say not to raise your voice from the chair, but by Jove, you test me. We will now move to page 105, 12.1, development applications determined.
Move that way, Mr Mayor.
Councillor McLaughlin, seconded Councillor Whipper. Is there any discussion? Then I put it. All in favour? Those against? Carried. We move to 12.2, page 115, development applications received from the 28th of the August to the 28th September. Any questions? Move councillor Whipper. Is there any second councillor McLaughlin? Do we have items that councillors wish to have in the report?
So, Mr Mayor, there is one there that we did call up already, and that's listed in the recommendation.
Right. That is item 7, item 9, item 44. So, and that item 90 be brought to before council.
Yeah.
Is there any other item that council wishes to discuss? No, the councillor Turley.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
The 17, the Redford Park National Trust, DA. Can somebody tell me that all the neighbours around there will be notified about this proposal?
I'll ask through to Mr. Wilson.
Through the Chair, in accordance with our community participation plan, anyone that's adjoining or adjacent to that lot will be notified as part of this proposal.
So all those new houses wouldn't be aware of this unless it's made public?
In accordance with our community participation plan, any lot that touches the boundary of the Retford Park homestead will be notified.
But what I'm trying to get at, you've got a long driveway that leads all the way up, probably be 1.5 kilometres, at least 1 kilometre. So all those people.
Anything that joins that lot is notified.
Including the driveway.
Yeah, but I don't have a plan, so I don't know. I'm only going on my visual memory of the driveway, where the building is and who abuts to it.
Yes, well, the answer is that all persons who will be affected in any way will be notified, and that's all adjoining property owners.
Okay, well, I think I would like to call it up then.
Okay, then it's up to councillors to vote on that if they wish to have it called up.
No. Council meeting.
So we've agreed on that. Now, remover of Councillor Whipper and McLaughlin, do you have any problem with, or Councillor Whipper, do you have any problem with number, what item was it, Councillor Erland? Item 17?
17.
Do you have any problem with that being called up?
No, Mr. Mayor, not in the interest of transparency, no.
Right.
May I have one more question, if I may?
Yes, but so that'll be included, Councillor Turner?
Yeah, number 114, 19 Function Street, change of use to service apartment. Can somebody give me an understanding of what it was when it's being built now? What was the DA approval? And why is it?
Through Acting General Manager, Mr. Wilson.
Through the Chair, we have to take that on notice. I think there are some existing units on the site and they're being changed.
I think rather than any confusion, we'll take it on notice.
Am I correct in saying this was a boarding house approved and now they're changing it to serviced apartments?
That's correct.
That is correct.
How did the boarding house get through without councillors being informed that was more than 1 kilometre away from the railway line?
I'll ask through the Acting General Manager, Mr. Wilson. Have to take it on notice. The answer will be given in the weekly circular.
Okay, I mean, I don't think any councillors have been informed about this development as a boarding house before.
I can't comment. I think it was in a weekly circular a couple of months ago.
No, a couple of years ago.
A couple of years ago. I can remember, it doesn't surprise me, so it's in the grey matter there somewhere. So your first question will be taken on notice, Councillor Scandrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I clearly remember this coming up. I think it was a weekly circular. It was in the list. I remember questions being asked about it.
Okay. Well, anyway, it's going to be clarified. So subject to that addition, and if there's no more questions, then I'll put the recommendation. All in favour, please raise your card. And that is carried unanimously. We now move over to page 12.3, development application 20/737, conversion of dwelling to dental clinic at 68 Barrel Street, Barrel. Do you wish for an introduction, councillors?
Yes, please.
Yes, please. Mr. Wilson, through you, Acting General Manager.
Through the Chair, the purpose of this report is to consider a DA 20/0737, which seeks consent for the conversion of an existing dwelling to a health service facility at 88 Barrow Street, Barrow. The site is zoned R2 residential, and under the Winchicabee Local Environment Plan, healthcare facilities are prohibited within the zone. The application, however, does seek permissibility under the provisions of the State Environment Plan Policy, Infrastructure 2017, whereby healthcare facilities are permissible in residential zones. The merits of the proposal include alterations and additions to the existing dwelling and conversion to a dental clinic, with hours of operation between 8:30 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday to Friday and 9 till 12 on Saturdays. Demolition of internal walls to create 6 surgery rooms. Entrance and egress is proposed to the building at the rear via a reception area at the rear of the site. Revision of 11 car spaces and also mature landscaping treatments throughout the development and also on the driveway access to the site. And also restoratory works to the main dwelling and also extension to the rear of the building as it's existing. The original proposal was not considered appropriate as the development contained a number of aspects that were considered detrimental to both the built form of the existing dwelling and also more broadly the heritage conservation area. Accordingly, a number of amendments have been made to the plans and it's made it a more acceptable development outcome. The proposal has been notified and 7 submissions have been received during that period. The substance of those submissions include streetscape issues, built form issues, heritage constraints, car parking, access and egress issues, landscaping treatments, noise and overshadowing. Those issues have been addressed on pages 133 to 139 of the business paper report this evening, and the applicant has also sought to address these concerns through amendment to the plans. Council staff have assessed the proposal as amended and have recommended approval on this occasion.
Thank you. Now we have questions from councillors Turl and Scandrett, McLaughlin and Nelson in that order. Councillor Turl. You're on mute, Councillor Turl.
No, I don't need a question. I'm not allowed to move anything yet, but I will when the time comes.
Councillor Scandrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And when the time comes, I'll be seconding that. But my question is, can the staff...
I'm not taking either of you to do this recommendation.
My question to the staff is, in the matter of car parking here, and I note we've got rid of the front yard car parking in these negotiations. That's great. And I noted the inspection this morning that there's ample car parking opportunity at the back in addition to the 11 proposed spaces. My question is, can we, in the recommendation, put something there that if parking is perceived to be an issue, that the applicant proceed to provide additional parking? I'm just asking that question.
Mr. Wilton.
Through the chair, the parking requirements aren't contained within the development control plan because there's no DCP that relates to the site as it's zone residential. However, the standards are contained within the RMS guide to traffic generating development. That has required this development to provide 11 car spaces, which has been provided. Therefore, because they're compliant with the standard, there's no ability for council to ask for additional parking on the site.
So, Mr. Wilton, would it be preferable, maybe, seeing the standards are not specific to this site, I understand that, to, for example, require 14 car spaces, maybe in 2 stages, something like that? Would that be appropriate? Because I noticed there was some comment this morning about possible concern that it might be full by the time you got waiting and staff and the like.
Mr. Wilton.
Through the chair, just to clarify, that there's no development control plan standards that relate to this site. It's the RMS guideline to traffic generating developments where the standards are applied. For this type of development, offering 6 rooms, the standard is 11 car spaces, which is being provided by the developer.
All right.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin, then Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Wilton and Mr. Pepping, maybe with regard to this, is the neighbourhood going to be notified, this residential area, be notified in conjunction with what the set now applies? Because I don't think people understand that they're buying into an amenity that can now be a commercial amenity. An R2 in it. Can I finish my question, please, Mr. Mayor? In an R2 zone.
I thought the question was that the neighbour's going to be notified.
Well, just let me finish, please. All I was saying is, are we going to notify people in R2 areas that now commercial developments can happen in conservation areas of Barrel?
Okay, thank you. I thought there was going to be a little bit longer than that, but you
No, that was it.
Councillor, I'll ask Mr. Pepping to comment.
Through the chair, the answer is no.
I think, okay,
Correct
thank
answer.
you. Yeah. Yeah, great, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Nelson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Would it be the only way to stop developments of this nature going ahead is to have the SEP change for conservation areas?
Mr. Pepping,
Through the chair, look, that is one option, councillor. There is a notice of motion that council adopted at a recent meeting to put up to the LGNSW conference.
Correct.
The department, for the association to write to the department to ask for it to be reviewed. So that's in the process of being submitted to conference. But that's probably the only mechanism, because the SEP does apply and it overrides anything that we might have applied.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Halstead.
Yeah, to you, Mr. Mayor. It's not a Dorothy Dix at all, but I'm just wondering, putting it in this way would be the right way to deal with it. It carries on from what Mr. Pepping said, and that is, do you think, Mr. Mayor, that the members of the community are aware of the ramifications of a state environmental plan of any type, let alone this one, where there is very little safety in sitting in a residential zone 2 or 3, when this sort of commercial development can be dealt with? And here we are, we find ourselves in a case in question where we're looking at the SEPP infrastructure. And of course, as Mr. Pepping said, it was amended recently to add even more misery to the community. And clearly it's a state environmental planning policy is always going to override a local environmental plan. I'm not sure the community understands. So I'm asking you, Mr. Mayor, what do you think?
Well said, Councillor.
I think how you're phrasing it, Councillor Halstead, I can only answer by saying no. And I'm sure the vast majority of residences in the residential shires of the area are totally unaware of this sort of SEP that can land on their next door neighbour's back fence, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's achieved the purpose, Mr. Mayor. You've just done a press release.
Good on. Okay. Now, if there's not another question, and I'm not going to take Councillor Turland and Scandrick moving it, but I'll take a question from you, Councillor Turland, and then I'll be looking for someone else to move it.
That's very good.
I don't mind. What have you got? If we, councillors, I go around, you allow one question, then the hands go back up, and I want to get the question finished. If you've got another question, then I'll have to go around the whole lot of councillors. So, Councillor Turner, your second question.
The question when you buy a property, does it not list all the SEPs, the LEP, all the requirements on those blocks of what you can and can't do with it?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, that is correct. How many people read that is another matter.
Well, one would think that their lawyers would take them through the possibility of what they can and can't do with the land that they've purchased. They're talking an LEP that changed in 2010.
Okay, let's take that as a comment. Councillor McLaughlin.
Am I clear to move a recommendation, Mr. Mayor?
Clear to move a recommendation.
Thank you. I'd like to move option number 2 as a recommendation. If I have a seconder, I'll speak to it.
What's option number 2?
I'll move an amendment then.
Okay.
Option number 2 is that it be refused.
What page is your
page 141.
141 option.
Page 141, option 2. And nominate reasons for refusal. Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Larry.
So it's seconded by Councillor Whipper. Councillor Turland has flagged an amendment.
It'll have to be a foreshadowed because it's got to be a foreshadow, which will be the
Correct negative.
the recommendation option 1.
Okay. So deja vu, Councillor McLaughlin, you have the right to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, Councillor Halstead hit the nail on the head. You know, he's outlined that the majority of people out there would not know that, you know, what this SEP does. It overrides our LEP to put commercial operations in residential area. And not only residential areas, the old A1, the best, the closest to town. That is, I think, directed to the state government, as Councillor House said, correctly spoke to, that the average person in the street would not contact their solicitor to find out. They would think they were buying in a residential zone R2. And that's why I put the proposal up, rightly so, that Mr. Pepping spoke to, that will take to the local government conference. That this might work fine in Sydney, what have you, but to put this so it's imposed on R2, and not only R2, but a conservation area of Barrel. Now, there's been a lot of changes made to this, and to a certain extent, I could have probably supported it, because what we first saw was absolutely ghastly. Let me tell you, they had a massive sign. They were going to park in the front yard. They said it wouldn't have any impacts on the property value or the heritage value. They were basically going to destroy the house simply to get a commercial venture happening. Councillors, you know, this can go forward. They can take to the Land Environment Court. I think we've got to make a stand. If we think that our residents here that buy into premium, you know, properties in Barrel Street can cop this. Now, we already know about one that happened in Merrigang Street, where we've had so many problems, air conditioning noises, the lot. Imagine you live next to this. You buy in a premier part of Barrel, and next door they put in a commercial development with 13 car spaces, with 6. Now, in the old days, a doctor or maybe 2 doctors could put a shingle up. An architect could. He could run from a house. Not a problem. But not this type of development. This is a medical facility. It should be in a commercial area. To destroy our heritage conservation areas in Barrel, I mean, where does it stop? How much further up the street will it run? You know, if we don't make a stand and say, this should stop, find somewhere in a commercial area. Do not destroy our heritage and our conservation areas where residents deserve a certain amenity. I'll come back and say some more, but I'll let others have a talk. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, who's speaking for the recommendation? Against the recommendation, sorry, Councillor Turland.
Yeah, look, if you look up and down from the hospital right through to Bongbong Street, you'll probably see, I would think probably maybe half of those properties are already commercial usage now to date. They are a benefit to our community at large, right from all around the Shire. Yes, and they could move themselves into the CBD area, and then they could be in all sorts of trouble with parking and other bits and pieces, being that we know that from other developments that we know down the road on the corner of Barrel Street and Bongbong, it's a $50,000 car parking contribution if you can't provide it. We know that from our past DA's lodge, we're in court with that developer. So you've got a situation where he can provide all the parking on site, only in the hours that have been approved by council, the hours that he can work. And basically, I see that there's no problem with this at all. You can have, for instance, a person could arrive there and have 5 children with 5 cars, their mum and dad. all living in that house. And it's pretty well the same amount of car parks that Councillor McLaughlin's concerned about. The streetscape's not changed. It still looks like the original house. And therefore, I can't see a concern at all. As I said, more than probably half of all those properties from the hospital to Bong Bong Street are already commercially used now.
Thank you, Councillor Turlin. And before Councillor Scandrett, then Councillor Whipper I'll allow next because he'll be speaking for the motion. But before I go any further, you have to put up the reasons for refusal. So it has got that it be refused for the following reasons. Councillor McLaughlin, unmute.
Happy to hear the speakers first, Mr. Mayor. I'll write all this for you.
I want to hear your following reason.
What, right now?
Well, it's part of the debate. You can't.
Well, okay. For one thing, it's prohibited in our LEP. This is only allowed under a state SEP, which I think we should oppose.
That's one. What's the next one?
Oh, okay. Okay, traffic congestion, amenity.
Right.
Public interest.
Yep, public interest.
Okay,
destruction of a heritage conservation area, or minimising the conservation area in Barrel. Detracts from the heritage conservation. You got that one? Yep. That should be enough, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Then I'll go to Councillor Whipper. Are you happy as the secretary to include those?
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Whipper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, look, on principle, I support the motion. I think there may in fact be other medical facilities in Bowral Street, but I think it gets to a tipping point where once we lose the heritage amenity of the area, it becomes just another commercial zone. And I think that we need to take a stand. It's ironic, isn't it, that the heritage debates we've had this evening, I think somebody used the analogy before of missing teeth in Mossvale. Here we're talking about tooth decay from a dental facility.
Very good, Councillor.
I think it is. And it is a state of decay because incrementally what's happening is we're losing our heritage, precincts. It's done very subtly, very silently. And unlike Mossvale, I do believe this is a state of decay that we're talking about. And unless we can maintain and put value on our heritage precincts, we have no value of heritage at all. So I think it's really important on principle, if nothing else, to support this recommendation and fight it as far as we can and for as long as we can. If our heritage is not worth it, then really nothing is it? So I support the motion wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Well said.
Thank you, Councillor Scandrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, can I just remind everyone that our demographics are on the way to 36% over 60 and probably closer to 40% within a few years. And therefore, we're seeing a rise in services, medical services galore. In fact, I was talking to some people recently who were happy that the Barrel Hospital expansion was well underway because it involved less travel out of the area for medical services. This is what I think this is likely to be, a response to demand for dental services. And of course, the fact that you need parking with that. You can't put dental services in the main street of Barrel because we don't have the parking facilities. In fact, we're taking away some of the day parking. So this is a very much a market response. I'd be interested to say when the debate moves hopefully to the foreshadow amendment, that if anything, we should possibly provision this for 15 spaces. The incremental cost is probably not much, and the space is there, just to add on 2 on each side. I just mentioned that to Councillor Turlin, but this is all about our ageing population and provision of services. And this proposal, I believe, satisfies the streetscape and the fact that that is, in essence, a medical zone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scandrett. Any other speakers? Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, look, Mr. Mayor, we were just recently, earlier in the meeting, complaining about someone taking council to the Land Environment Court, which is costing the community money. And now this motion, they'll be taking us to the Land Environment Court, costing the community money. So the SEP is introduced by the state government, and our local members are the ones who the people should be complaining to. So, you know, I always find it difficult, very difficult, where something is legal to vote against it, even though you might have to draw a line in the sand. So possibly we might have to work up a number 2 that the council make representation to its local members, drawing attention to this particular issue. Anyway, that's the position I'm at the moment.
All right. So are there any other speakers? Then I'll put the motion.
No, I'll have a right of reply, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, you have the right of reply.
Now, Mr. Mayor, I'm just going to quickly read from what we got from a resident that lives there. I think it goes very much to the point in question. This proposal is commercial in nature. The proposal development should be located in commercial areas, not established residential areas. The planning of this residential listing area is diminished by the quantity of the businesses and surgeries being granted permission to develop. A private residence is unable to subdivide their land, and yet multiple clinics are being approved. It is unfortunate that the state government permits such a development in a residential zone 2. But given the heritage conservation area classification of the area in which the site is located, it allows council to require the applicant to comply with the details and intent of the heritage DCP and relate to the area. I'll just go on to say the proposed change of use should be refused, as it will set an unfortunate precedent for what might happen in conservation areas, an area zoned for residential use. Given that the zoning has been in place for many years, nearby property owners are entitled to look to council and the planning scheme for some sort of certainty that they will continue to reside in a residential neighbourhood. Residing next to a dental surgery with 6 surgeries and parking spaces for 14 cars is not quite what people probably had in mind when they invested in the neighbourhood. The primary concern of elected representatives is to look after their ratepayers, reasonable expectations, and in this case, the planning scheme gives plenty of grounds to refuse. So that was written, we all saw that, and that's from a neighbour, and I go along with that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. All those in favour of the recommendation that the application be refused, please raise your cards. Councillors Whipper and McLaughlin. All those against?
Shame.
Councillors Halstead, Scandrett, Andrews, McLaughlin and Gare.
Oh, what? You didn't call my name again, did you?
Sorry. No, I did. I'm sorry. Councillor Turlin, you've moved on the screen. And Councillor Nelson. I declare the motion lost. Councillor Turlin is now moving the recommendation as a foreshadowed motion. Do I have a second to Councillor Scandrett?
Yes.
Councillor Turland has moved it. You're right to speak, Councillor Turland.
No, second, Mr. Mayor.
He's got his councillor.
Second.
Just put the foreshadowed amendment.
Yes, so you're moving the motion as printed as the foreshadowed motion.
Yeah, put the motion. Put the motion. No need for debate. We've been through the debate. Put the motion.
Then I will put the motion. All in favour of the motion, please raise your card. Councillors Halstead, Scandrett, Andrews, Nelson, Turland and Gare. I declare it carried.
Those against?
And those against will be Councillors Whipper and McLaughlin. I declare it carried. We move to 12.4, page 179, planning proposal to amend clause Winchcombe local government plan to include the western portion of Redford Park.
Yes, I'd like to move that, please.
I'll second that.
I think Councillor Nelson had his hand up for a question.
I don't mind if they move and second it, but I'd like to add in, if they agree, that add in an urgent planning proposal.
Here.
Okay. I missed the move where it didn't move.
Scandrett and McLaughlin moved.
Standard, Councillors Scandrett and McLaughlin moved and seconded.
And I said I'm happy with that amendment, Mr. Mayor.
And
before I was muted.
With the addition of the amendment that Councillor Nelson has suggested, can you word it up again, please, Councillor?
Well, it's just an urgent planning proposal. It's done. It's there.
The difference.
Yeah, just that's fine.
An urgent,
I'm not sure it's an urgent, but I think it's a planning proposal be urgently prepared.
Okay, yeah.
That's better.
Yeah, urgently prepared. Right. You happy with that mover and seconder? Yes, Councillor, who's down the bottom? Councillor Turland, question.
Well, no, I'm going to move, it'll be a foreshadow, and that'll be option 2. Not to recommend, not to amend the LEP 2010.
Okay, so that isn't a foreshadow.
Well, it has to be because it'll be a direct negative.
Yes, it's in a direct negative.
Yeah.
So is that, do you wish for Ms. Sternard to give an introduction?
Yes, please.
Okay, so it has been moved and seconded. There is the potential of a foreshadowed motion, and I'll ask Ms. Sternard to do an introduction.
Through the chair, the report has been prepared following your resolution previous meeting to do so. The content has been based on the legal advice that was accompanying the petition that came in with regard to the DA that has triggered this. My understanding is that if we can amend the local environmental plan to include the subject land, then it offers the opportunity for the executors of the estate to seek remedy in the civil court system. So in accordance with the advice that was accompanying the petition, the report recommends that we seek to amend the clause as was requested.
Okay, so what, it's in relation to a council resolution in relation to this. Any questions to Ms. Stannard? Councillor Turl.
Ms. Stannard, may I ask a question that relates to, this is an LEP change. Does the SEP overrule in relation to dual occupancies at all?
Ms. Stannard?
State environmental planning policy always overrules a local environmental plan.
But there's nothing.
So the question is there a SEP that overrules this particular?
No, there's not.
No.
That's what I'm trying to get at. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, question, Councillor Nelson. You're on mute, Councillor Nelson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The question is, does this only apply to the corner blocks in this development?
No.
Ms. Stannard?
No, it doesn't only apply to corner blocks. It would apply to any site that's within the lot description that's included in the clause.
So it would stop anyone from subdividing then?
Can I answer that? Sorry, Councillor.
Mr. Pepe.
It would stop anyone doing anything that was inconsistent with the agreement that the estate has created that exists over the land. Could be subdivision, it could be extra buildings, it could be whatever is prohibited under the agreement. On all those lots, and it's in the, if you look at the recommendation, it's bounded by Old South Road, David Woods playing fields, and the lot that Redford Park is on. So it's the 157 residential allotments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McLaughlin. You're on mute, Councillor McLaughlin.
Sorry, Ms. Stannard. With regard to, we have said this is urgent. Any idea of what sort of time frame turnaround that we could have this LEP change?
Well, I can certainly prepare the planning proposal and get it to the department very quickly. After that, it's up to the department how quickly they issue a gateway determination, assuming they do issue a gateway determination. Then I need to undertake the necessary referrals, undertake the exhibition, and then bring a report back to council. And depending on whether we have delegation or not, we can then proceed with the amendment to the local environmental plan.
So minimum turnaround time, 6 months, 12 months? What are we talking?
Well, I always quote 12 months, but then if it comes in more quickly than that, particularly if we don't have delegation, that can seems to be adding a long time to getting a final amendment done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question, please? Just to clarify that it's really the executors of the estate who are also requesting this.
And all the landowners.
And all the landowners. No, I want to clarify the executives, the people who are actually developing the land.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, through the chair, just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, there was an estate of the late James Fairfax, and there was a group of executors that sold the land to 157 people. So this effectively blocks those landowners from doing anything that's inconsistent with what they've signed on the agreement.
Right. So is everybody clear exactly on that? Then if there's no, Councillor Turtle.
So in fact, what we're doing, Mr. Pepping, is we are cleaning up the mistake made by the representatives of the subdivision.
Absolutely.
Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that is very much a leading question. I think it should be answered in the context of a planning matter.
Okay, well, I suppose the leading question then is we are paying, the public at large is paying for something that wasn't created properly, in their view now, when they did the planning proposal for the subdivision. Communities now paying to correct, the wider communities paying to correct a shortcoming within the documents.
I don't think I'll allow the staff to answer that. It's a comment. We'll take it as a comment. I'm not going to let the staff answer that.
I think it's factual. It's true.
If there's no more questions, we're in debate.
Good, thank you.
If we're in debate, I would I would just like to speak to it if I may.
You may.
Thank you. Look, we heard Mr. Kim speak to this earlier, councillors, and he had all the petitions there from the landowners there, as Mr. Pepping have said. All these people signed up what they thought was a binding agreement to abide by what was put in place. Now, unfortunately, through circumstances and using someone that probably wasn't up on our LEP, something was missed. And unfortunately, Councillor Turlin's right, we're probably paying for this to have it fixed. But we're doing it for our ratepayers. We're doing it for those residents that signed a petition that said in good faith, we bought into these lots, we agreed that we would comply with the requirements of that buying into that development. So the loophole that has been exploited by different people, this will shut down, and that's why we need an urgency on it. Otherwise, the value and the amenity of the area that these people bought into in good faith and signed up that they would abide by the covenants have been ignored by some. So I think we are talking to those people and that community that are doing the right thing, the 99% of people that are doing the right thing, that are building on corner blocks to enhance the facility, as Mr. Kim spoke to earlier, and not out of greed or their own self-interest. So I'm supporting, well, that's honest. I'm supporting this recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson and Councillor. Are you for or against, Councillor Nelson? You're mute. You're on mute.
I'm for, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, then I'll go to
Someone
someone against. That'll be Councillor Nelson, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Turl. Then I'll come back to you, Councillor Turl.
Nelson.
Yeah, but Councillor Turl, you have the floor.
Oh, okay, that's good. Well, I'm not quite sure this is all about greed or anything else. What it is correcting something that somebody has the opinion that it wasn't correct to state up front. This is the only subdivision in the whole Shire and probably in New South Wales where you cannot build a dual occupancy or subdivide for a block that's over 1,000 square metres. It is in all documents to date. This is the only place, probably in New South Wales, that we are going to change for the purpose of this. And it's extraordinary that you talk about greed on this particular site. I don't own a dual occupancy, but Councillor McLaughlin owns a dual occupancy. And therefore, but wait a minute, you talk about greed, and
hang on.
it's just not right to talk about greed on dual occupancies.
On this, Mr. Mayor.
I am asking councillors not to mention other councillors, not to denigrate other councillors, or to try and make a situation volatile. So you've got another 30 seconds to think about it. All right, unmute. Councillor Turl, you may continue, but please refrain from mentioning other councillors or denigrating other councillors.
Okay, I accept that, but we shouldn't be denigrating somebody who already owns dual occupancies within the Shire or wishing to build these dual occupancies within the Shire, which seems to be all right. We can denigrate them and say that it's greed and all the other bits and pieces, that it should have been corrected from day one when the subdivision was put forward. I don't think it was a mistake. I think it's what the state government requires for us to do. And even our 2031 plan says that we will make supply for different varieties of houses within the Shire. But guess what? We're not going to do it on the Fairfax estate. I find that extraordinary. I just find it totally out of touch with the wider community, because it just ties this whole thing up. You know, it's the only block of land, probably, as I said, within the state, if we go down this proposal, that won't allow dual occupancies. I would actually suggest and probably recommend that it won't get through the planning proposal. It won't get through, because there'll be other people that will be recommending that it should not be approved. It is not what I call good governance here, changing the LEP which allows this to happen, and then to say that those people who do have them are greedy. I find that extraordinary. No names. I won't mention any names then.
Thank you, Councillor Turlin. Councillor Nelson, then Councillor Halstead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I haven't got a problem with council paying to fix a problem, especially if you're one of the owners living next door to one of the blocks that's been subdivided. I had a lady next who has one of those blocks, who's built a house, who's going to live next door to one of those subdivided blocks of land. Now, she was in tears on the phone to me, because her amenity has now been taken away from her. And she moved to this Shire so that she could have that amenity. And the Fairfax estate was designed that way for single houses on those blocks of land, so they could have their gardens and trees. You only go and have a look at Campbelltown and see how the houses are all built right next door to one another, where you can put your hand out the window and shake hands with the person next door from their window. So, you know, Fairfax didn't want that sort of development. He wanted spatial development in tune with the type of person he was. And if you've been to the house and seen how he lived and the paintings that he had a vision. And that's what it was all about. And so the developers came up, and it's pointed out on page 181. Purchasers were required to sign an agreement with the estate owners to abide by design guidelines prepared for the Redford Park estate, and to ensure that any person they sell to enters into a further purchaser's deed of agreement with the executors. Now, unfortunately, the LEP overrides that agreement, and so people are taking advantage of council's laws, the state government laws that allow the subdivision to go ahead. But the principle is that we wanted single houses on those blocks of land to be enjoyed by the owners. So that's what it's all about, and I do hope that this does get up. I did support the rescission motion previously, Mr. Mayor, to take this to the Land Environment Court because of the legal advice, but that was beaten in the council chambers. So here we are trying to fix a problem, and it was mentioned before it'll possibly cost about $5,000. So to go to the Land Environment Court costs you a minimum $40,000, I think, for $5,000, and the 100 odd people up in the Fairfax estate, it's worth every penny. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Halstead.
I would think some of you at least know, certainly the planners should know, and I think they do know, that LEPs override the provisions of covenants in certain circumstances. It is the majority in most cases, but here we have a case of the council that's been put in a position now that it's got to rectify a problem that was caused by a less than astute group of trustees or whatever they were, that or their legal advisors, that did not tie this up properly on the titles of the land in terms of a restriction as to user. Now we know, some of you know, the planner hopefully knows that you know, certain Section 88 of the Conveyancing Act can be used that way. Now, what's proposed, in my view, is totally appropriate. So I don't agree with those that object to this. The thing is, it should never have got to this stage, and it's because of the proponent, by way of dealing with it, didn't deal with it properly, as in, as I said before, restrictions to user of a certain type. I'm not going to go into that or which one it is. Well, some of the planners will know. But by the same token, earlier on, not today, but a previous meeting, one of the planners sitting around the table there now made a point very clear that the quarter-acre one, which Councillor Turlin spoke of, the 1,000 square metre, was commonplace across the state. That's not the case at all. I've done my research, and there's many, many councils of a similar sort of nature to this, if you like, you know, regional or whatever else, that do not have the provision for the subdivision of corner blocks on 1,000 square metres. And I'll be moving something of that future, not at this meeting, but I'm going to address that one in another scene, because I think it's something that we don't need here. But here we're debating on this one, totally supportable, should be done as soon as possible. Those people that were in that subdivision had a real understanding in their mind that they had protection. Well, guess what? They didn't. And that's why previously the council did the right thing, in my view, in terms of what it had to do, because, you know, it's always in a position where it has to comply with the law. And the law at that stage did not give any protection, afford any protection to any owner in that estate, simply because it was not addressed properly. This, as proposed now, will do the job. So I'll be supporting the proposition to change the LEP for this purpose.
Thank you, Councillor Halstead. Are there any more speakers? Councillor Whipper. Councillor Whipper.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, totally supportable. And Councillor Nelson put up a good case there, particularly citing the woman who moved into the estate with those expectations. And I guess the same argument could be put up for rural villages, for heritage zones, and so it goes on. People buy into these areas with an expectation that their lifestyle and their amenities are going to be protected. So it's not only about Redford Estate, although we're talking about that now, but I think those principles need to apply right across the board. It's a shame that our state government can just impose you know, regulation on local government areas and local government in itself to override what the expectations of local government areas are, and the residents of those areas as well. So I think it's really important that we support this. And the fact, I think it's an opportunity for those that want to put covenants like this in place to learn from this experience. But I'm sure that the executives of the Redford Estate really did believe that people would honour that good faith agreement. So it is a shame that we've been brought to this position where we have to make a decision and invest community money into rectifying the problem. But I think it's money well spent. And as I said, it's an opportunity to learn. And those principles, I think, that were exposed or brought up by Councillor Nelson do need to be remembered right across our planning processes.
Thank you, Councillor Whipper. Councillor Scandrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, of course, this is the next step in tidying up what was a problem. And it was a problem, particularly that some of the councillors were here when originally the Fairfax Estate started looking at this program, and they had the design rules. And that's certainly where I remember the absolute intent to have a quality subdivision, to have space around every house, and to green it up. The presentation, of course, clearly shows that from the Residents' Day that the design rules have generally been followed there, right down to gable treatments and the like. But of course, you can have dual occupancy in this estate, and that point hasn't been made very clearly today. but you can't have it detached and you can't subdivide. It's got to be an attached dual lock, and there is one in the estate, and I think another one coming, where you wouldn't know that there are two residences there other than possibly to do with driveway and parking. So this is, I think, an appropriate tidying up of a loophole, if you wish, a gap that wasn't intended by the estate and certainly by all of the people who have bought in. And I note that there's over 150 residential allotments in there, and we've seen 3 or 4 petitions now on this from residents there. I think it's a very clear message. So, councillors, I recommend this motion to you, particularly with that addendum of the word urgent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Councillor Scandrett. Is there any need for a right of reply, Councillor McLaughlin? Scandrett, you've done the right of reply.
Councillor Scandrett moved it.
Yes, I just looked at the motion. So all in favour of the recommendation, please raise your card. It's a planning matter. Councillors Halstead, Whipper, Scandrett, Andrews, Nelson, McLaughlin and Gare. Those against? Councillor Turlin. I declare the motion carried, and we are now on to 12.5, post-exhibition report for rural tourism planning. Wish for an introduction? No? Would somebody be prepared to move the recommendation? Move Councillor Turlin and second Councillor Whipper. I'll put the recommendation. If there's no debate, all in favour raise your card, and it is carried.
Mr. Mayor, sorry, point of order.
Yes, Councillor.
In the pre-meeting, I did ask that we have an introduction to this.
Okay. Ms. Stanner.
Through the chair. Councillors, you will recall that in November last year, the rural tourism policy was adopted by council, and at that meeting, council also resolved to undertake a number of amendments to the local environmental plan with regards to improving rural tourism opportunities. Amendments that were enabled under the current standard instrument format. So this planning proposal addresses those. We have been on exhibition, had a positive response to the draft amendments. They're recognised as seeking to provide some value-adding opportunities to rural agricultural pursuits, in keeping with our policy and also in keeping with the desire that we have a small boutique style rural tourism on those rural lots. So this report comes back seeking to progress these planning proposals, these amendments, so that we can amend the local environmental plan. It was also noted in that report in November last year that there were certain desirable outcomes that the industry would like, but which were not possible under the standard instrument as it is at the moment. And one of these particularly related to artisan food and drink industry in the E3, particularly environmental management zone. So the resolution was that council discussed this with the department to try and seek a resolution. A letter was sent to the department, and just today a response received that the department is working with the Office of Small Business Commissioner and Service New South Wales to try and identify some farm gate and farm event definitions which could be put into the standard instrument and which may assist in that regard. And council's response to that letter is that is an excellent news. We want to emphasise that in doing so, that they are possible to be considered specifically in the E3 environmental management zone.
Okay, any questions to Ms. Stanner? There are no questions, councillor Scandal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could we just elaborate on the equine side of things too, please, Ms. Stannard?
Ms. Stannard?
A letter was sent to the department or to the minister requesting that a definition specific to accommodation on rural land for equine support. The response was that that was not to be supported at this time. So that's one aspect that we need to continue to pursue with the department, either to relax the rural workers' dwellings provision or to seek an alternative.
Right, well, I guess that'll be a matter for another forum with regards to our tourism and so on development. And the other question on this is what time...
hang on, councillor Scandal. Any other councillors with questions? It is no other councillor. I'll allow you one more question, councillor.
It's a second part to my first one, and that is what is the expected time frame, please, Ms. Stannard, for the E3?
Councillor Scandal. There is no two parts to a question. There is a question. You take advantage of A and B to a question. You have a question.
Mr. Mayor, I heard you said you'd allow it. I just wanted to ask on the E3 side of things.
Councillor Scandal, we had a training last week that if the mayor speaks, then you remain silent. Now, if you wish another question, fine, but you know the rules of this council after however many years you've been here, you know the rules. And I don't know why you continually stretch them. Your second question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I did stop when you spoke. The tape shows that. My second question was simply what time frame will that E3 development response take in Ms. Stannard's experience, please?
My experience is that it's unwise to estimate when the department will do anything, to be honest. We're actively engaged with the Southern region to try and pursue these matters that are important to us. We had a fairly prompt response from the department, so I will be pursuing it, and as soon as we have notice that something will be on exhibition, we'll certainly be making a submission.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the report.
Wish to make a comment?
Through the chair, the letter that we received from the Department of Planning, we'll put in the weekly circular for this week.
Great, excellent. Thank you for the report.
And any other discussion? And I've put the recommendation as moved by councillors Turland and Whipper. All in favour, please raise your card. That's carried unanimously. We now move over to 12.6. Thank you, Ms. Stannard. Register of returns disclosing interested councillors and designated persons.
Move that way, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
Second. Is there any questions? Councillor Turland. Councillor.
So, it's all right. So over the next 12 months from this date, if anybody, if there's a change, we just have to inform council. Is that how it works?
Through due to Mr. Guard.
Through the chair, if there was a significant change, we would request that a councillor fill out a new return.
Councillor Turland, I can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know why I didn't mute it myself. It says that the returns will be made published on council's web and made available on request for inspection. So I'm not quite sure how you can make them on the web where it's there for everybody to see, and then you've got to, if you want to go and read them, you can read them on the web. So that seems to contradict themselves. If it's on the web, you don't need to come and read it.
I'll get that clarified, Councillor Turley. Ms. Lidgard?
We're required to make them available on the website, and we redact residential addresses and signatures. Individuals can come in and do an open access of the register as well, and view that here at council.
Good news. Excellent.
Thank you. So we have the recommendation as moved by councillors Whipper and Nelson. All in favour? Against? Carried. Then we move on to 12.7, provision of expenses and facilities of councillors. Moved by councillor Turlin, seconded councillor Nelson. You got a question as well, councillor Turlin?
Yes, as I've made a point earlier that my $672 is not correct. I have not taken any money in 12 months from council. I just want that noted and corrected in the document. And I also noticed that the 3 that went to the Liverpool Local Government Association conference, there seems to be a disparate amount between 2 of them. $663 is Councillor Andrews and Councillor McLaughlin, but Councillor Gere, the Mayor, is $990. Is there a mistake made in these 3 statements?
I'll pass that over to Mr. Mooney.
Yeah, Mr. Mooney, I'll let you answer this question. There's an explanation, Councillor Turlin.
There is, through you, Mr. Mayor, that's obviously due to your commitments under the CRJO, Mr. Mayor, and that you would have additional accommodation expenses above and beyond the LGNSW conference.
I attended 3 conferences last year, ranging from Canberra to Tumut to, I'm trying to remember where the 3rd one was, but no, I don't know. Anyway, wherever they were through CRJO meetings. All right, is there any other questions?
No.
Then I put it. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
16.1, page 203, minutes of the Traffic Committee. I assume you will move that, Councillor Halstead, on Thursday the 24th September.
Yes, I will, Mr. Mayor.
Moved and seconded by Councillor Nelson. Question, Councillor Scandron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question for Councillor Halstead, and actually I'll ask it of the Acting General Manager. We received some comments about visibility from the lookouts on the Jib during the recent school holidays. I passed those on to the Acting General Manager. Could the Acting General Manager comment on that in relation to the item in the traffic report of one way up on the Jib, please?
Councillor, throw that across to council staff.
Mr. Mayor,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the answer is no, because
Okay.
it had nothing to do with what was dealt with.
I was going to say, that's the longest no I've ever heard in my life.
Oh, my God.
Look, Councillor Scanlon, the answer to your question is I've referred that to the appropriate staff and they're going to look at it.
Thank you, Mr. Paul.
Okay, any other questions in relation to the minutes, not on other items? Then it was moved by Councillor Halstead and seconded Councillor Nelson. All in favour? Against? Carried. We move over to page 17.1, question with notice meeting on Maltings. Councillor Whipper.
I'll move that way, Mr. Mayor, if I have a seconder.
I'm happy to second it, Mr. Mayor. Happy to second.
It was a good question, Councillor Whipper.
Yeah, and it was a good response as well. So I thank the staff for that. It's good to know that that the heritage integrity of the site will be maintained, and I do thank the staff for that response as well.
Can I make a comment, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, you can make a comment.
Thank you.
Councillor Nelson.
Councillor Whipper, the Heritage Committee did take a site inspection there, and I think it was very worthwhile. I think generally the feeling was that we're pretty excited to see the potential of retaining a lot of this heritage and reviving it. So I think it's a really good result. So we've had a few in the past, and as you probably remember, Councillor Whipper, you've been there long enough to see a lot of them not go anywhere. But I think this one will actually do the right thing and actually progress. So I'm looking forward to it. So we were very supportive of what really they've got in mind there. It's a very small hotel, boutique hotel. I think it's only about 40 rooms. So in association with this heritage, it is a great site and yeah, very good. So thanks for your question anyway.
Yeah, I appreciate the feedback, Councillor McLaughlin.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You and Councillor Nelson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I was also part of the walkover of the site, and councillors were privy to an information session on the project. And the project will be good for the Shire, and it will be good to have it redeveloped. Over the years, there's been constant graffiti and vandalism on the site. And it's interesting to note that when we're at the walkover, that there is a full-time caretaker employed by the applicant. And between the local police and the caretaker, the vandalism has decreased, and the site was looking particularly good from what the caretaker's work he'd been doing. It's a 30 million plus development, so it's a great deal of money going into the site. I don't think the applicant's going to make a lot of money out of it, but he's certainly going to leave a footprint for the Shire. And it'll be an interesting development to watch happen. Thank you.
Thank you. And there's a long way to go, but just hope that it doesn't get a wet fuse like a few of the other ones. So just put the recommendation as that it be noted, all in favour, against, carried. We move to 18.1. Notice of motion, Heritage Park Netball Courts upgrade. Now,
I'd like to second that.
We had a comment from council staff today. But you've moved it, Councillor Turlin, and seconded Councillor Skett.
I'd have an amendment.
Okay, well, we have an amendment. What is the amendment, Councillor?
That the request to upgrade the netball courts at Heritage Park in the sum of $80,000 be referred to the Finance Committee for consideration.
Well, that's an amendment. Is that going to
I'll
be
second that.
Seconded Councillor Nelson. Councillor Turlin.
Second, Councillor McLaughlin.
No, I'm asking, seconded by you, I'm asking Councillor Turlin to speak.
Okay.
Well, we already know that it's got to go to the Finance Committee, so it's a Clayton's amendment. We know it has to go there. We know it has to go there. The issue is that I'm putting forward tonight is that we can't procrastinate any longer on an upgrade that the state government has put $306,000 in. The committee is putting in $80,000 and they were looking for $80,000. This is a council facility and is not putting $1 at this point into it. The Sport and Rec Committee, as Councillor Andrews will tell you, is about $124,000 a year. And this is a facility that's owned by council that's denigrated and degraded to a point of where it's actually dangerous. And here we have the possibility of maybe getting some federal grant for it. Well, that's great. And I think that's really good. But if we don't get it, we need to make sure that this money is allocated. Otherwise, the off chance is that they'll lose the $306,000 that the state government has put forward. This is exactly what has to happen. It's got to go to the finance meeting anyway. So you can vote on the amendment or you can vote on the motion. It's the same thing. It's got to go to the finance anyway. This is just making sure that we will not put off again and again the opportunity of upgrading this facility. I'll wait for somebody else to talk on it now.
Well, I'll be speaking against, Mr. Mayor.
Look, I just want to clarify something. There are two different motions, and you're voting on two different motions. One is straightforward, the other one is to a committee. So, Councillor Nelson.
Look, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I took the call from the Netball Association, and I told them straight up that I'd support their application. It makes sense. But as every councillor knows, council has a standard recommendation on all its committees that state, save for any items which have budgetary implications, and that any item with budgetary implications and which is unfunded be referred to the Finance Committee for consideration. Council has the Finance Committee next Wednesday. So no doubt the issue will be brought up next Wednesday. This 80,000 that's put up has budgetary implications, is currently unfunded, and does not identify where the 80,000 would be allocated from, which budget pothole. Therefore, the issue should be considered by the Finance Committee. And that's what I would have supported by Councillor Turlins if he'd done that recommendation, or been able to identify which budgetary hole that the 80,000 would come from. We've also since learned that an application has been submitted by Council that we may get grant funding in the next 2 weeks for the 80,000. And so rather than Council spending the money, the state government will be giving us the 80,000, which will be committed towards the netballs project, and the project will be undertaken. So maybe the staff could advise if the issue is on the agenda for the Finance Committee. Otherwise, it needs to be on the agenda for next week's Finance Committee.
I'll defer to staff, but
just for clarification.
Yeah, can I just say that I do not believe there would be one councillor who would not support that we use every endeavour to find this money. If the Netball Association has got that amount, they're putting in so much themselves. It just would be a very poor look. But I'll defer to the councillors to make comment, the staff to make comment as a matter of urgency to get it up there next week. Mr. Paul.
Councillors, I'll make 2 comments. The Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Program is federal funding. It's money, I guess, it's come from the federal government as part of their COVID stimulus package. So council's actually already been allocated a bucket of money. What we have to do is we have to match programs back to that bucket of money, and they have to approve them. So it's slightly different to the normal grant situation where we're off chasing money and competing with other councils mostly for money. This is money we've actually already had allocated to our council. We just have to put projects in that tick the boxes, so to speak. So we've lodged the application. We're pretty confident that it will tick the box, if I can use that terminology. We're probably a week and a bit away from actually getting that notification. So I'm reasonably confident that we will get the money through that federal grant. If we don't, there is an opportunity potentially next week at the Finance Committee to deal with it. We're dealing with the end of year result. There is a small surplus at the end of year for June 30, 2020. There is already a recommendation that's been framed in terms of how we would deal with that. There's an opportunity for the councillors to, if they wanted to make a commitment next Wednesday with that small end of year surplus to fund this if the grant doesn't come through. So I would suspect that we're all in the same agreement in terms of where we're going. It's just a matter of how you frame the resolution. So,
thank you. I'm going to ask Mr. Do you wish to say something?
No, the only thing I would like to add, Mr. Mayor, if that's the case, councillors will have something prepared in readiness for the meeting to ensure that you've got options available should you wish to take that option up on next Wednesday. So we'll have something ready.
Thank you. Councillor Andrews and then Councillor Turl.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I probably should let Councillor Turl go first. He may have a similar thought. I support his recommendation 100%. If we're not successful with this grant application, surely it can be, and I need staff to advise me, and Councillor Turlin's permission to incorporate that in his motion, that this is contingent on not receiving the 80,000 or whatever from a government grant that's pending. Right, doing this, I believe that we are committing to it then, or I'll wait and hear what Councillor Turlin has to say.
I think, well, how about we rather than have councillors opposing each other when we're really all on the same page, that we want to support it. So subject to the recommendation, that subject to the Finances Committee next week, the council determine that it will find $80,000 by means.
Could I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Look, Councillor, to get into the debate, and I know there's two motions before you, but could I suggest perhaps a blending of the two?
That's what I'm
Yes,
saying.
please.
Okay, well, my suggestion would be that the request to upgrade the netball courts at Erridge Park in the sum of $80,000 be referred to the Finance Committee for Council to make recommendations on funding options, comma, should the application through the Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Program be unsuccessful.
Other words,
so we'll give you an option to find the money from Council if the grant application is unsuccessful.
I would, it would be so uncouncil-like where there is a allocation of $440,000 from a club and a grant, the council would not meet that obligation to see the project through. So what that motion is saying, it's going to happen.
Correct.
Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Nelson and Councillor...
Look, Mr. Mayor, look, I'm happy if what Mr. Paul just put up be the motion, moved by Councillor Turlin and seconded by Councillor Scandrett, because he did bring it forward, and I'd be happy to remove my amendment if you understand.
I really think, Mr. Mayor, I think that if this is a compromise, which is what it is, then the seconder should be Peter Nelson in this case. So we've got a combined, resolution, and that's the way it should be seen.
Yeah, I think in this instance, as the mover and seeing the amendment is being put into it, I would suggest it would be appropriate for Councillor Nelson to be the seconder. But
correct.
Up to Councillor.
Thanks.
To accept the motion first.
Thanks, Ken.
Well, I'm quite happy with that because the only thing that matters is the outcome.
Correct.
Thanks, Councillor Scandrett.
Councillor Turl, are you happy with that?
Yeah, just we need to put in there, make sure I'm not muted, that it's on the 21st finance meeting of October.
Correct. The next finance.
Yeah, we referred to the next finance, or the finance meeting dated the 21st of October.
That's it. You've got it. We've covered all bases. We've guaranteed the money for the girls, and that's the most important thing for the Shire.
Yeah, and I tell you, I've spent more Saturday mornings on there than I think than most other councillors, I tell you. All right. So that is a good compromise, Councillor. Councillors, I'll just put the recommendation, all in favour, and we've got a unanimous support there. Thank you. We're now moving over to notice of motion, second bridge over railway line at Widget Caribee Street, Barrel. Councillor Turlin, do you have a second?
Yes, he does.
Councillor Scanlon. Councillor Turtle.
Look, the reason why I say this is because I brought this up before when we were indicating of about a $400,000 grant money to try and do the investigation work for the second bridge over Kirkham, over Wingecarribee Street. And it would seem that the adopted parking, traffic and transport strategy adopted on 12th of December 2012 indicated clearly that the second bridge over Wingecarribee Street will be an intricate link to making the whole project work. Now, knowing what we know now from the Range Road Bridge and what we've been informed, there's a height that you have to make. You have to work between the top of the rail to the underneath side of the bridge, and I believe it's 7 metres by memory. 7 metres means that if you look at the Wingecarribee Bridge there that's there now in front of us, it's about 1.5 metres higher. This is where the road will be, above the bridge that's there now. It is nearly going to be impossible. It will be impossible, not nearly, it will be impossible, unless council can provide me the evidence that it's not, that you can't build a second bridge that's 1.5 metres higher than what the road level of that bridge is now. It cannot be built. And so before we get into any further movement on Station Street, if we can't build the intricate link in this bridge that makes the whole Station Street supposedly linked together as per the strategy plan in 2012, what do? We're missing a link. It's clear in the report on the document 36 that was sent out on the 25th of September. It should have been part of this motion, which is what I put through, but you haven't got it as part of the addendum. But it clearly shows that the bridge is a clear, big link, critical link in the whole process. And so are we actually going down the path and then we find out we can't build it because you can't drive up to the new bridge and off on a falling road on Kirkham Road? So I'm putting to you guys, until we actually know that we can build this bridge, as all the investigation says is a critical link, we are going too far forward without having the full picture. So my recommendation is that we actually refrain from doing any more investigation work until we know this bridge can be built or not be built. Because if we undertake Station Street and we've sold it to the public that the second bridge will happen in Wingecarribee Street, and it can't happen, and I've asked this question now for probably close to 2 months, if it can't happen, we are wasting the whole process on Station Street. So,
thank you, Councillor Turtle.
Am I up for my 3 minutes, or are you just calling shots?
Time has expired. Councillors, anybody wish to speak against?
Can we have a response from staff on that statement, Mr. Mayor?
That's a fair question. Without entering into the debate, a statement has been made that it can't be built. Mr. Paul.
Look, councillors, I understood that a response had gone back to council on this issue, so I'll need to go back and check that. But the advice is this.
I'm sure.
Yeah, the advice is this. We've had some communication with ARTC who control this issue, and the response is this. Whilst they require when a new bridge is built and go across a railway line, the 7.5 metre clearance, there are exceptions to that. And the reason why there are exceptions is because along that railway line, and in Barrel in particular, there's already a bridge that doesn't meet that requirement, the one that's there already. And there's a tunnel a bit further up the railway line that doesn't meet that height requirement either. So the advice that we have got is that we would have to apply for an exemption to that height requirement. We would most likely get it on the basis that the existing bridge doesn't meet that height requirement, but we'd be required to build the new bridge in a way where it could be jacked up in the future if the ARTC was to commit to the funds to raise the existing bridge, because they own the existing bridge, it's their infrastructure, it's their liability. We don't fund that, we don't maintain it, and we wouldn't be replacing it. So there is an opportunity to build another bridge there of a similar height with a similar alignment, on the basis that we get that approval, and as I said, that it was be built in a way, and it can be, I'm advised by engineers, it can be built in a way there where it could be, the deck could be jacked up in the future if the ARTC wanted to commit to raising the height of their bridge. So it is possible. That said, we need to do the detailed investigation and design work to confirm it.
Thank you. Councillors, Councillor McLaughlin.
Thanks for that, Mr. Paul. I think that we do appreciate what you've said there with regard to that. I'm just going to Councillor Turlin's second question, where he says the council undertake a review of the possibility of integrating a new bridge at Function Street, Oxley Hill Road, incorporating in the possibility of a Barrel Brickworks redevelopment. Just on that, and a couple of weeks ago, Mr. Mayor, we saw a front page story in the paper that said that council hadn't looked at all the options, and someone had come up with an idea of how we could solve the problem by putting a bridge over there. Now, Councillor Turlin and I have had a bit of discussion on this, and I think Councillor Turlin went and saw Rob Parker, a civil engineer. Rob Parker, who's built freeways and highways all around the country, went and had a look at this, I understand, with the idea of seeing if it could work. And I don't know if Councillor Turlin saw what was put in the paper, but what went in the paper, basically, reported in the Southern Highlands News, Rob Parker came up with the idea that it didn't stack up and it couldn't work. So there's no way, even if you had $50 million, that you could get the elevations of the road to go over the railway line and back into Function Street. So just on that, I think the community should be aware that that doesn't work. And Councillor Turlin should know that because it's been investigated by an engineer with quite a lot of expertise in that area to have a look at it. So it was in the paper, and I was surprised to see it put back in for this notice of motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turlin. Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Turlin, I'll come back to you as your right of reply. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Scandrett, and then Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, of course, if the bridge was to be jacked up at a future point, the proposed bridge, then the other one would have to be jacked up, and then immediately you would realise that they are technically impossible to build the approaches for with the land that we currently, or the ARTC currently own there. So I'm supporting this motion because I think we've got to deal with the issues in front of us and get some resolution of them. And the community certainly was very attracted on the Station Street upgrade to the idea of a second crossing. Now, if that can't be delivered, that brings into question, I think, a number of other things that were proposed. I mean, quite some time ago, 2018, we had a bunch of other things in this proposal. I think lights at the old Nissan hut. We had some additional works up the top. We had a car park, multi-storey car park on the other side, land acquisition with that, and so on. These are not part of that vision anymore. That's why this motion, I think, needs to be supported. Thank you.
Thank you. That is what I call misleading information. Now, I'm going to have Councillor Nelson, and I'm going to have a little bit to say on this. Councillor Nelson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, in my opinion, this is a red herring. I'm not supporting it. I don't think any of the councillors should support it. It's a $30 to $40 million project. The state government's only given us $5 million to get on with Station Street. The other issue is that back in August, there was a question raised about alternate barrel bypass. The staff went into the archives to dig out the response and it's a 2-page response that clearly shows that Station Street, what we're proposing, is the correct action. It's a stage 1 of 2 stages. Don't forget, we have to go back to the state government to get money for stage 2. You know, while the delays from the state government keep occurring from the different departments, talk about the New South Wales Rail and New South Wales Infrastructure, it's talk about the complaints that we should be making to those divisions to get them moving so that we can get on with the project. So this is a red herring. The engineering staff support what we're doing, and we need to vote this down and move on. Thank you.
Councillor Nelson. Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very quickly, point 1 and 3. Okay, with respect, they can be argued, and they have been argued for whether they're right or wrong. But point 2, you know, we've got to truly stop misleading the community, and we've got to stop talking about, for very obvious reasons, this so-called fictitious bridge at the southern end. It's impossible for a number of reasons. I could go on for 10 minutes. You know, the land acquisition for a start would be massive. You'd have to ramp this thing back as far as Loftus Street, pro-finished, to get the height over the railway line. It just can't happen, and it's been proven time and time again that it won't work. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And I'm going to have a tuppence worth, because Councillor Nelson's right. There was a comprehensive report that came back in, you know, a few weeks ago, a month ago, from our engineering department back in the 80s, who said it's just not going to work. The only option is to go over is to do the route that we have now. And council back then took that advice, purchased other land. We have stage 2, we own all the land. And to try and then match that up with an overpass, I chaired a meeting at the beginning of 2000, and to look at the possibility of doing exactly what Councillor Turland is suggesting. And after about 6 months of trying to make it work, the engineer or whoever gave the report back in the 80s or 70s, whenever it was, we all came out to the same conclusion. And that you're talking $30 million, or it was $25 million back then, Councillor Nelson, and that's 20 years ago. I'd reckon it'd be $70 million and climbing. So, you know, I mean, be realistic. We have a plan, we have a resolution of council, we have the land for stage 2. Let's get on and build stage 1 without this continual infighting, for goodness sake. It's a council resolution. And we heard last week that when there is a council resolution, you may not like it, you may not agree with it, but that's a council resolution. Majority wins. And I think council have got to remember that. Majority rules. Let's get on with what we are here to do, and that's build a decent distributor road, not bypass, upgrade people about.
Oh dear. Now, may I have my right of reply?
Compliance with the law.
If you, Councillor Houser, did you want to speak before I do my right of reply? Did you say?
No, I'll be speaking in another forum probably. No, you go on.
Okay. Well, the issue, firstly, Councillor Nelson, it's actually 7.5 million from the state, not 5 million. So you're 2.5 million short. The second part of it is in 2012, it was quite clear, very clear, that the intricate part of this was the Windsor Caribou Bridge to make it work. Now, we've just been told that they can possibly take it down to the same level as the bridge that's there, which at the pavement level is about 6.5 metres. And the reason why I know that, because I've been and had a look at it. If you have a look at the old bridge of Windsor Carraby Street, it is, it's made out of arched brickwork. Its day will be coming to its end very shortly. But what I want to make this quite clear is you've got to understand, if you're going to go to 7.5 metres, if that's where we are, even at the current bridge, you have to rise to it and come off it. Now, you've just been told by the acting general manager that this bridge, that ever might happen in Windsor Carraby Street, has to be able to be lifted. So when you lift it up to 7.5 metres, you're now 1.5 metres above the pavement level of the existing bridge now. You cannot enter and exit the new bridge. It will not happen. My question to you is, if you don't do the investigation now, which you're going for a government grant of $400,000 to do it, and you can't do it, the whole thing has failed since the 2012 strategy plan, which clearly shows it's a critical link to the whole process. So unless you research that first, because if you can't build that bridge, the whole system of the investigation is shot. And so you need to look a little bit more wider. Now, the issue about Function Street, if Mr. Parker did his research a little bit more, we don't know what the Brickyards is doing. We don't know where we can take a bridge back into the Brickyards in the future, and the possibilities there. But there's also the opportunity then of the ramp up and ramp back. If you look at the ramp that you're now talking of Function Street and you put that into Windsor Carraby Street, you've already answered your own question. You can't do it. Windsor Carraby can't happen. It just can't happen. Now, unless that is detailed first and quickly, you've got it all back to front. This will not happen. You need to be very, very careful, because you've sold it to the community, the second bridge. If it can't be built, you will be challenged. Do the investigation now quickly. Go and have a look at it. It's quite clear.
Thank you,
You can't do it. And remember that the unfunded bridge now is $12 million in our operational budget. 12 million.
All right, we have the recommendation, resolution as moved by, or recommendation as moved by councillors Turland and Scandrett. All in favour of support of the motion, please raise your card. Councillors Scandrett, Turland and Halstead. Those against? Oops, sorry, wrong card. Get it right. Councillors Whipper, Nelson, Andrews, McLaughlin and Gare. I declare the motion defeated. I'm looking for a motion now to move into closed. Moved by Councillor Nelson and Whipper. I'll put that. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you everybody from who's been watching this on live stream. We will be coming on back on once the closed committee is finished, and in approximately 15 minutes or so.